Thank you. Welcome to this evening's meeting of our Housing, Neighbourhoods and Leisure Committee. Just want to read the webcasting notice before we start. Please note that this meeting may be filmed for live and or subsequent broadcast via the Council's website. At the start of the meeting, the Chair will confirm if all or part of the meeting is being filmed. I'm doing that now. You should be aware that the Council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during a webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy. Members of the public seated in the public gallery will not ordinarily be filmed by the automated camera system. However, please be aware that by moving forward of the pillar or in the unlikely event of a technical malfunction or other unforeseen circumstances, your image may be captured. Therefore, by entering the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and training purposes. We've also have people with a hybrid meeting, so we also have people dialing in or they will be shown on the screen. And can I ask people, because of that, if you're not speaking, please switch off your cameras if you're joining us remotely. And if you're not speaking at the meeting, please switch off your microphones. And also to the people who are remotely attending, please switch off your microphones. But switch them on when you're speaking, otherwise we won't hear you speak. Thank you. Okay, item 1, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting, which was held in July. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up from that those minutes? Any corrections? No. If not, have them here for signature. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Minutes of other bodies. We don't have any, I think. And moving to petitions, we don't have any petitions. Item 5, questions from members of the public. We don't have any members of the public's questions, but we do have a question from Councillor White, but I understand that Councillor Williams is going to ask it. So Councillor Williams, would you ask your question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, you thought you were safe because Councillor White's not on this one, but here's a question anyway. Who knows? Insulating homes is a triple win, tackling poverty, cutting carbon and creating jobs. Friends of the Earth estimate that in Reading 4,000 existing homes per year need to be insulated up to a high standard to tackle the climate emergency. How many homes per year does the council estimate are being insulated? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Williams. Now I'm going to invite Councillor Emberson, the councillor, relevant lead councillor, to make a response on my behalf.
Thank you, Chair. I thank Councillor White for his question and Councillor Williams for asking it on his behalf. So the council does not have access to data on the number of retrofit projects undertaken on all housing in Reading. It is possible, however, to look at EPC data for the borough as a proxy measure for the extent to which the energy efficiency of Reading's housing stock is improving or otherwise. An analysis of the EPC data for the borough suggests that the overall pattern since 2008 has been that the EPCs lodged for properties graded F and G have reduced over the period, whilst the number of A's and B's have shown a steady increase. Though it is fair to say not a significant one in terms of the context of meeting challenging net zero objectives. Properties graded C and D have shown a slight upward trend, and those graded E have shown a marked reduction, albeit there has been a recent slight upturn which corresponds with the requirement to demonstrate EPCs are at least an E for rental properties from 2020. I have asked officers to send Councillor White a more detailed analysis of the figures on which this brief summary is based, and I'm sure he can share with Councillor Williams if he's interested. The council does, of course, have more control over its housing stock, which makes up around 10% of all housing in the borough. And as a result of our long-standing programme of investment in retrofit, RBC Housing has achieved an average standard assessment procedure, SAP, energy efficiency rating of 74, which is better than the national average of 65 for all housing and 69 for social housing. This equates to an average EPC band C for RBC housing compared to the national average of D. Clearly there is more to do, but this is still an impressive record that we can be proud of. As set out in detail to the paper presented to HNL in July, retrofitting our ageing private sector stock remains one of the biggest challenges we face in Reading, and indeed the rest of the country face this issue too, in meeting the net zero ambition. We therefore welcome the recent recognition of this challenge in the government's heat and building strategy, and very much hope that the investment needed to bring housing stock up to requisite energy efficient standards, which is far in excess of the means available to us locally, will be forthcoming to enable rapid and effective implementation of the strategy's objective. Though, as ever, I will believe it when I see it, having seen the botched £1.5 billion Green Home Scheme. This committee will later consider the Rent with Confidence scheme and new website. Contained within this report are various requirements to enable high quality private sector housing for Reading. And one of those is a landlord needed commitment for enhancing their homes by maximising energy efficiency, striving for a rating of C where possible. We hope many landlords will make this commitment. I hope Councillor White / Councillor Williams is reassured that this council is working hard to insulate homes across the borough, and I look forward to the action plans tracking back to March HNL, where we can rightly continue to discuss this important issue.
Thank you, Councillor Emberson, for answering on my behalf to a question asked on someone else's behalf. If people actually turned up, it would be good. Have you got a supplemental?
Am I allowed one for Councillor White's question? I don't have one from him because he didn't know what the answer was, of course.
Good point. Good point. I think you can ask one. You can.
There are two really interesting areas. The first is that is it impossible on the data that we possess as a council to come up with that estimate that Councillor White was asking for? Because although you very generously listed some of the information, you've then said this is a brief summary and more detailed figures are available. But does that mean we can't ever get to a decent estimate? Or does it mean that we might be able to get there if we drill into the data enough? Thank you.
Can I answer, Chair?
Please go ahead, yeah.
Thank you for your supplementary, Councillor Williams. So as we kind of put in the question, it's quite hard because we don't have all the details. You know, people don't have to come to us to say I'm doing works on my home. So we have to use the EPC rating as that basis. However, the report that tracked in July kind of went through that data in terms of what EPCs we have available and using that to work it out. I don't know if you were trying to allude to the fact that we hadn't gone through the analysis. I don't think you were being cynical, but you know, it's a big piece of work, especially with the private sector, and owner occupied homes are even harder, which make up 55% of homes in the borough. So it's a big piece of work, but as a council, we're very much committed to ensuring that we can look at that data and see where what capacity allows in terms of making sure that we can channel the right energy into making it possible. So as I said, those action plans will track back and that will look at some of that data that is referred to in this data. And I'm not sure how the Friends of the Earth do their estimate, but we can have a conversation with officers in terms of how they do their estimate and how we do ours in terms of the EPC and collate them together. So I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Councillor. Was that very comprehensive? I think you can understand for private housing, it's quite difficult for the council, but I think that was Councillor Emerson covered that point quite well. So that was item 5. We don't have any other questions from councillors. Item 6, we don't have any decision book references. We're going to move on to the reports, but can I just say, ask the committee if they don't mind. We've had a request to move item 15 up to just after item 7, because Councillor Hoskins got another commitment that he needs to get. He might need to leave a bit early. So if that's all right, no one objects to that, we'll do that. Okay. So for item 7, is GLL speaking first, or how are we going to do this? Can I invite GLL?
I'm speaking first just to introduce.
Donna's on.
Thank you. I'm Donna Pentelow, Assistant Director for Culture, and I'll be introducing this report.
I think you're muted, Donna.
Can you hear me now?
Oh.
2 people can hear me. Can the council chamber hear me?
We're a bit stuck without sound.
What about now? Can anyone hear me now? Yep. Can anyone hear me now? Appears to be an issue with council chamber. Nikki, any ideas?
Julie, is it worth switching it off and on again in the council chamber thing?
Can Julie hear us?
Oh, of course you won't be able to hear me either.
Does the administrator need to unmute us?
Yes, we can all hear each other, but council chamber can't hear us.
Well, we're going to adjourn for like a few minutes while we try and sort out the problem. So, can you hear us, Donna? If you nod.
I can hear you
Yes,
now.
we can't hear anyone from the remote, so it rather hampers that. So. Donna, can you say something now at all?
Yep, can you hear
Testing.
me? Testing, testing.
No,
No.
you can still hear us, but we can't hear
Yeah.
you, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Hello, we've turned it off and on again. Could someone speak and test it?
Testing, testing. Can anyone hear me?
No, that is still not working. Not working in the room.
Donna, can you say something again?
Yep. Can you hear me? Anything?
It's supposed to be AB Bridge Mini. The problem is they can hear each other. Fine.
If they're dialed into a meeting, they could amplify that meeting from a laptop.
Well, you were going to join it, but that didn't make any difference. I think it just means you've got the power of the producer. I don't understand what is not working. Well, I just did that with the council chamber, but it doesn't. Sorry?
Hi, Donna. I've just,
Yeah.
if we defer the GLL element, I can probably get down to the Civic in about 15 minutes to deliver two of the elements of the presentations.
Yeah.
So I've just put it out, if that's a route that we want to go down, I can do that. I don't know if we wanted to suggest that to Nikki or something in a bit.
Okay. Nikki, Paul Sherman's mic's been disabled as well, so he can't speak even if they could hear us.
Then we can put the mic in your laptop.
Can you hear us? No, we don't.
No.
I can hear something.
Donna, can you say something again?
Yeah. Hello.
It's not communicating.
Well, the last
Can
time it's the
Can you hear me?
PC.
I'm talking.
If we can, yeah, so it should be the same. Yeah.
Donna, can you say something?
Yep, I'm talking. I can hear you.
Okay, so if we
Turn
turn
the volume right up.
your volume up.
Yeah, sorry.
Feedback.
That's because that mic's on. Sorry again. That's because this laptop's mic is on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, mute yourself.
Mute this mic. No, we think it's a mic on this, but it's not. Okay. We need to mute. Yeah, you need to mute that as well.
Yeah, mute that one. Put the thingy there. Sorry.
At the very least, they call a mobile number.
Really?
Mute everything, put the mobile.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you speak, Donna?
Donna, can you hear us?
It's not them.
Can you say something?
Yes, I'm saying. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yep. We're just
Yeah,
trying to see if we
keep
can do it
going.
on Julie's laptop.
Okay.
That's sorting it. I don't know how we were sort of doing a roundabout system.
That's great. We just need to disable the microphones of our GLL guests, please.
Okay. We have a solution, councillors. Okay, we go back to the agenda.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you for everyone's collective effort. That just shows how politicians have all tried to work together to the greater good. So well done, everyone.
Can you stay till this comes back?
Are you ready?
Oh, I can't. No, I can because you're producing. Just trying to get the thing bigger so that we can actually see people better. And when you get to the presentation, they can actually see it. Ah. Is it?
Is there a tracker pop? Oh, it's on that.
No, it's
on that.
What's it in?
Right. Donna, I think we go back to you introducing this item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the report that you have in front of you is to inform the committee of the council's bid and successful award of National Leisure Recovery funding to support the reopening of leisure facilities post-COVID-19, to inform the committee of the council's bid to support England for £1.5 million, and to update on the award and the start of the new leisure contract. And colleagues from GLL will be presenting a short presentation, assuming they can get their microphones abled, just updating committee on that. In December 2020, Sport England launched the National Leisure Recovery Fund to support publicly owned leisure facilities through COVID-19. It was open to local authorities whose facilities were operated by external operators. The council was successful in being awarded £160,772, which it accepted in March 2021. In July 2021, the council was invited to apply to Sport England's Strategic Facilities Fund for £1.5 million to support the development of the new leisure facility at Rivermead and the new community pool at Palmer Park. The council is currently awaiting a decision from Sport England on this bid. Following a delay of 17 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the council's new leisure contract commenced on the 1st of July 2021. Greenwich Leisure Limited, or GLL, are operating all of the council's leisure centres and have been since that date. And I'm pleased to report that works on the new community pool at Palmer Park commenced in August, and works on the new leisure facility at Rivermead started in September, and both projects are progressing well. I'm now going to hand over to GLL to present a short presentation on the first 4 months of performance.
Thank you. So colleagues from GLL, would you just introduce yourselves? Ready to go.
They're muted.
They're muted themselves, or
Unfortunately, their mics have been disabled, so they're unable to unmute themselves, which we've not seen before. But we have Paul Sherman, who's the partnership manager for GLL. Paul, can you give us a wave? And we also have Jamie Coleshill, who's the regional director for GLL.
Problem with some of his ones.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
oh, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello,
So-
good evening. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. Microphones unmuted. Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to be able to address you tonight and present back on performance so far. Now, I was hoping to share a presentation with you, but my screen, I guess, as I'm an attendee, is not allowing me to bring up that option. But I did, in true Blue Peter fashion, provide a copy of the presentation, which I'm hoping that Council Chamber may be able to bring up on the screen for everybody's benefit now.
Working on it.
So have you got it somewhere? On the desktop or in the?
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Donna.
We've all got it somewhere, but just I've got it on my machine upstairs ready, but I'm not there. So let me just.
Hooray.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Donna. I very much appreciate that. Okay, so my name is Paul Sherman. I'm a partnership manager for GLL here in Reading. So I'm looking after the 4 centres. That's Meadway, Palmer Park, South Reading, and Rivermead. And I'm joined by my regional director, Jamie Coleshill, this evening. If we move on to the next slide, thank you, Donna. Donna's done some of my work for me already in terms of a summary of that contract. It is a 25-year contract. So I don't know if we're able to move on to the next slide.
Beth laid plans, it doesn't seem to be doing that. I'll keep working on it.
Thank you. So it's a 25-year contract which commenced on the 1st of July of 2021 this year. It is for the 4 centres that I just mentioned. Within that, there is, as Donna mentioned, a replacement for Rivermead and the 6-lane community pool at Palmer Park, and it's £43 million worth of investment over the duration of the contract period. And one thing I'd like to highlight at this early stage of presentation is that this transfer of the services took place, as everyone will know, sadly, in the midst of a pandemic situation, which has made the challenging circumstances for bringing new colleagues, over 200 new colleagues into the organisation from the council, and a number of training sessions and initiatives were all very much having to take place under COVID restrictions. So everything from social distancing to the number of people that could be in an office and physically around to do the transfer. So I would like to pay tribute to both council officers and GLL colleagues that facilitated that transfer in such difficult circumstances. And we've also been able to forge ahead with a number of projects within that, which I'm going to talk about now and give you an update on. So I can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Donna. Just to summarise, I won't go through each individually because I'm going to cover them into the presentation in a bit more detail. It's £43 million over the partnership life cycle, which is 25 years. The highlights for that, as you can see, the 2 major projects there is the investment into a replacement for Rivermead and the building onto the existing Palmer Park and the creation of new facilities there. And there are a number of innovations and projects that are going to be happening, everything from making frontline service improvements that will benefit customers in terms of the visual aesthetics and the delivery of the products and new services, but to a significant number of schemes behind the scenes that will give extended life into these facilities, which are sort of circa 45 years old now at the stage of taking on the project, which will extend their life and put a number of energy commitments in, which I'm going to talk a bit more detail on later in the presentation. So if I could move on to the next slide. Thank you, Donna. The simplified timeline for you all in terms of how these schemes are working, I've set out here for you. Now, as Donna's already mentioned, we began construction on the Palmer Park work in August this year, and then in September we followed on with the construction work for the replacement of Rivermead. And then just this month, last week, we began work on an exciting new project at South Reading, which is going to be developing the fitness facilities, the changing facilities, and improving the customer experience upon arrival and the reception areas of that building, which is the first phase of initial investment over there. I've listed February 2022 as when that project will finish, although we're really pleased that we've been able to work with our partners and our building contractors to have a phased opening of works within that. The fitness facility has currently had to close at South Reading while we do this work, as there is some extensive construction work that required the gym area to be closed in full for that amount of work. But we've been able to facilitate every South Reading member out of 3 other centres across the borough, which has been a really key success in being able to do that. So it's allowed them access to all the facilities. And we will be doing phased opening after Christmas, early in the new year, for certain sections of the gym and the studios. So it will allow those local members to be able to access those facilities earlier than that February 2022, and then the scheme will fully open from February. We're then looking to move into a very similar scheme at Meadway, which will run straight on after the South Reading works complete, to begin in March. That will again involve some improvements for the health fitness, but it also includes full refurbishment work for the squash courts and the swimming pool wet change areas as well, which will really lift that product over there. And again, improvements to the customer journey through reception and as you travel through the building along the main walkways. So that work will then be completed by July, so we'll be ready for the summer over there. And again, we will have some elements of some phased opening in there. We don't anticipate anywhere near the level of full closures for Meadway, because we are able to structure the work in such a way that we can retain areas of the building being open, which is a real positive for that scheme. So towards the end of this year, I've aimed for December, but we feel we may be slightly ahead of that. Palmer Park, the full works for Palmer Park will open, and I'll touch more on that in just a moment, as I will with Rivermead for March 23. So if I'm able to move on to the next slide, thank you. And then I'll skip past that. There's a very, very nice picture of what a fantastic new replacement for Rivermead will look like. In terms of giving you an understanding of where that sits, so the green, the grassed area at the top of the plan there, where it shows the existing swimming pool at Rivermead, that is where the current building is, and the new building, as you see, is being built, bringing it a lot nearer to the main to Richard Avenue, which is going to be fantastic visuals for people as they're coming through the area in what's going to be a real flagship facility for GLL and the council in this area. The mix of the facilities, if I can move on to the next slide, thanks Donna, to give you an understanding of what's within the facility at Reading. So we're going to be introducing a 25-metre 8-lane pool, which will be suitable for competitions. There is a diving pool going back in there, and that will have a movable floor, which will allow any number of flexible activities, from babies and young children's lessons right the way up to competitive diving, which is a very exciting opportunity. There will be a water confidence splash pad area, so younger children, babies and toddlers will be able to interact in fun water features there in a very, very safe and closed, secure manner, which is a real new innovation for us. And we have 300 seats available in the pool hall area. So from a competition regional perspective, that's going to be a really, really key ambition for us, to work with the local swimming clubs to deliver competitions in that area. There will be an extended cafeteria area, and that will lead into a children's soft play facility, which is going to be the very latest design by the time that goes in, and that will be able to host children's birthday parties, as well as there will be 3 adjoining rooms within that facility. The dry sports area, which is indicated in the green on the top of that map there on the first plan, that will be the sports halls. That is 6-court sports hall, 6 badminton court size sports hall, and that will also cover basketball as well, so Reading Wickets will be able to continue with their home there. And then the lower plan on the slide there, that's the upper areas, and that will be the fitness studios and the main gym, and those studios will be purpose. So they could be used from everything from the traditional fitness classes through to community meeting rooms and places where we can deliver the adult weight management courses that we are very keen to commence in 2022. And then we will be retaining the existing ATP, sorry, a bit of jargon there, that is the AstroTurf pitch, which is the full size, currently sand-based AstroTurf pitch to the rear of the existing Rivermead. That will remain, and then within the next few years in the project, we'll be turning that into the latest 3G pitch playing surface in the area and doing full renovation. And we are retaining the 5-lane 25-metre pool, which sits to the north of the current Rivermead. So thanks, Tom. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So focusing now on Palmer Park. Again, give you an impression there of what that facility is going to look like. To give you an idea where that is, you will note in the grey in the centre of the map there, the existing building. The hub area will be the main centre, so the reception area, the entry point with a cafe and another soft play facility going in there, and then the swimming pool will be to the top end of that. And if I can just bring us on another slide, I can give you the facility mix for that. So we will have there, so the top one, so the ground floor there shows the swimming pool to the to the left, a 6-lane community pool. Then you have the main reception area and the cafeteria, which leads into the children's soft play facility, slightly smaller than Rivermead, but still of a very good size. And there will be an outdoor terraced area for the cafe there as well. We're retaining the existing building, so that will allow some refurbishment and renovation of the existing change rooms there. So that will continue to service the athletic clubs and the cycling clubs for the outdoor areas, with an improved offering for those changing rooms. And then upstairs, so above the swimming pool, which is the lower part of that plan in the green, there'll be a brand new fitness facility which will link into the existing areas, which will become studios, and that'll be fully accessible by ramped access and lifts for all of our customers to be able to access those areas. So that's the projects for Rivermead and Palmer Park. Moving on to the next slide, I've touched pretty much on the detail of the capital investments for both Meadway and South Reading. Part of that work there is to allow for us to be able to uplift those areas. The fitness centres will be benefiting from new equipment, new refurbishment, new products for them will be able to be delivered in there. The changing rooms is really key for us to be able to offer improved changing facilities, and with new equipment going in, and the customer journey is very important for us there. One of the successes we've had with creating concierge type roles across GLL, and we've been able to do in Reading, is having a person in the main reception is really key, because by removing some of the functions that the new technology allows us to do for those members that are up to speed digitally, to be able to self-serve themselves and enter the building, it allows us to be able to engage with those customers that need more support on the front line, be it those that maybe don't have the same access to technology or would like us to be able to support them in that journey. So that really will enhance that experience there. So that's our plan for the initial investment into South Reading and to Meadway. Going to look now at the first quarter of our recovery so far. So this is based against what the activity levels were for 2019. And this is something that industry-wide, all providers have been looking at, and we're working with Sport England and a number of partners to ensure we're all talking like for like. So matched against the 2019, so pre-COVID activity participation levels, and this covers all 4 centres in Reading. As you can see, very pleasing, all of our statistics are going the right way. Actually, all areas are currently performing above the industry recovery rate for this current period, which is between 65 and 70%. Sorry. Swimming and swimming lessons performing very well. So swimming, general swimming is performing at 83%, 87% for swimming lessons. So that is a strong return at this stage. I would point out the sports hall growth to 73% is particularly good now on the basis that in July time, certainly, and just prior to that, a number of sports hall drive facility activities weren't able to return either under government guidance or within industry guidance, because there were a number of activities due to the touch points and the inability to social distance that weren't able to return. So they have now been able to start returning, and that's why that growth has been significant there. And we've also been able to bring back some of the larger scale events, particularly at Rivermead, which would have been taking place in those halls. So the summary of that, we are either tracking on track or above in most areas the industry expectations, and we are looking to return as closely to those pre-COVID 2019 levels. Some highlights which I would pull out of that, I think is very much worth giving credit to the local sports clubs and organisations that use our centres in Reading, as we've had excellent relationships with them, not only in terms of restarting after COVID, but working with them to support their COVID protocols and COVID officers within the clubs that they put in, as we've all sort of entered that unknown territory. But going forward in terms of agreeing their programming needs, that's been very important for us to have those relationships, and that's worked quite well. We will be holding a online sports club forum on the 25th of the month, where we're looking forward to welcoming more clubs, where we can update them on the latest, obviously, information, the progress with the 2 new centres. So that's really positive for us to have coming forward. We've had 1,194 new members join within this quarter, membership schemes, and it's been great for us to be able to offer a membership which gives more options. Previously to 2021, GLL were only operating Rivermead, so we've been able to open up that membership access to all 4 centres. Our membership prices in this borough are cheaper than any of the neighbouring boroughs, so cheaper than Bracknell, cheaper than Maidenhead, cheaper than Slough. So we are in a strong position there. We've had 1,194 new members during this quarter, which is positive. And there were 1,160 people having swimming lessons every week across the leisure centres. If I could, sorry, just move us on to the next slide, because I apologise, I've got that information on a slide and I didn't present it. So there is that information. I'm going to move off of that one, if I may, onto the next phase. So looking ahead into the next period for us. So these are some visuals of what you can expect to see in the gyms at South Reading and at Meadway, and then going into the replacement for Rivermead and Palmer Park. And a couple of pictures in there, the launch of the swim school. So if I can move us on again, thanks Donna, to the next slide. Touched on the works at South Reading and Meadway. We will be launching a new swim school at South Reading in January. Now, one thing to note with that at this stage, which is you may or may not be aware of, is that prior to the transfer of the centres, there was a third-party external operator providing the swimming lessons at South Reading, so they weren't being operated in-house by Reading Borough Council. That service ceased during COVID times, so there hasn't been a swim school at South Reading for probably a year or so now. Now that presents an opportunity, which is great, but it equally presents challenges for us. We are working now to recruit extra swimming teachers, and we have local swimming courses going on, and we have a number of local people that put themselves forward to go on to those courses. But it is worth mentioning we are trying to do this at a time when there is a national recruitment crisis on. It's at its worst levels for vacancies to starters nationally. So we are working hard, and we have a number of schemes in place to put that forward. And it's our ambition to have that swim school in place in January, which will again further grow the swim opportunities that we have at South Reading. Other areas we've been working on, we've been working closely with partners in the council. GLL are going to provide the resource for the council's Walking for Health scheme. So we will provide a coordinator for that. That will be at no cost to the council. We will support that scheme ourselves, and we think that's the right thing to do. And we think that there is a synergy with our own programme and operation. So we're very happy to provide that facility to the council. We're going to be expanding our own exercise referral scheme, the local GP referral scheme. We now have the ability to offer that across all 4 leisure centres, so that's really going to be positive for us. That scheme is in place now, and we have new starters already coming through and are on that scheme. And then from January, we'll be launching an adult weight management programme, which will be specifically targeting those people that need a little bit extra help and access to our facilities. And we'll be looking at operating 8 individual courses next year, which will give almost 100 people the ability to access those courses. And again, we're working closely with the public health team within the council for these schemes, and the continuation of the construction work at Palmer Park and the replacement for Rivermead will continue during that period. If I were to move on to the next slide, thanks Donna. So worth touching on, so we are very much committed to helping the council to meet the climate emergency targets to be carbon neutral. So we've got initially there's £1.6 million of investment into energy saving schemes, and I've listed some of those schemes out there. We've already commenced some of these, so we've already commenced pool lighting upgrades at South Reading. That's already taken place, and that's not only energy efficient, but that's actually been able to improve the LUTs capacity, so it looks a lot brighter and a really sort of attractive pool environment over there now. So we put some of these schemes in place already. Just to highlight on there that the CHP one, that's actually from an old slide, which I should have taken off, so my apologies. So we're actually going to be using air source heating pumps and solar panelling in place of CHP units, which are far more cost effective and provide far more energy environmental benefits. So my apologies, it says CHP, it will actually be the solar panelling and air source heating on there. And then just a final slide for me. In terms of our further commitments, I met recently with the team from the Berkshire Active Healthy Me programme, and GLL are going to be providing free use of our facilities and free meeting room hire, which will save Berkshire Health the cost of having to go and hire external meeting areas, and we're going to be working with them to target the families that maybe wouldn't have access, be it for funding or for health wise, that wouldn't otherwise be able to access leisure facilities or would take the opportunity to get into leisure facilities. And we're going to be working with them to provide a supportive programme of activities, which will be everything starting with things like table tennis and badminton, where a family would not be required to spend any money to provide equipment. We would do that for them, and we would hope to lead that up into family swimming sessions when we have people feeling confident and feeling, sort of more body confident and feeling more active and coming into the centres. So we're really pleased to be able to support Berkshire Active and work on this scheme and provide this free support to them. So that's effectively our current performance where we are. And again, just thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to come along tonight and share this with you. And obviously happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, and thanks for sticking with us through our little snapping there we had of our tech, which is ongoing. There's a piece of sellotape with some string over here that's keeping us more or less. But yeah, well done, Julie.
Yes.
Councillor Hoskin, I think, deserves to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I won't ask any questions. I'm looking, he says I'll be brief. But thank Jill for coming on this presentation. I think it's really important, certainly Jill brings on this. I envisage it being a regular event coming to this committee and being held accountable for performance and also saying what they're delivering. And I think that's really important, that process. So this is the first one. I think it's been a really good presentation, because I think it's easy to forget. I mean, one of this has been a long time coming, and we desperately needed investment in our leisure facilities for a number of years. There's been things, challenges that happen along the way. And I think it's easy to forget just how challenging the environment is at the moment to be delivering a project like this. I mean, we've got COVID, which let's put back the signing of the contract. There's a double whammy for leisure services, public leisure services, is that we've got reduced income through COVID, the sort of recovery that's been going on. It's pleasing to see us ahead of some of the national indicators of where that recovery is. That's really important, because people coming in and spending money, that's a major problem, isn't it? And the other thing is, over these 11 years, councils have faced huge cuts to their budgets, which is kind of, big impact on the provision of public leisure services. And a real testament to the joint commitment of the council and the GL, but particularly the commitment of the council to follow through on the commitments we made around the provision of a new pool. I think a lot of people of the view, I believe, when they see it, and very soon they will actually be able to see some of that construction. So by the end of this month, you should be able to start the frame starting to actually rise in Palmer Park, which will be a beautiful sight for somebody who's so invested in it. I think it's something really pleasing for local people to see. The challenges don't end. I mean, there's clearly a lot, a difficult time ahead, and it's really great to set ourselves on target. I mean, if you ever speak to a neighbour who's trying to get someone to do an extension, you'll soon find out about the problems of supply, of getting staff and stuff. So I think one of the better decisions is that we have signed up with a partner, with a construction partner, who are leaders in this process of getting leisure centres built. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that in terms of what's been outlined here. There's been stuff talked about. Some of the really important stuff is around the targeted health promotion things. Obviously, I would say that to Council for Health. It is used in the public, some of our public health budget, subsidy differently, rather than some of the universal sort of subsidy actually looking to increase participation in exercise amongst those are least likely to do that. And those often, we are more deprived communities, because actually reducing health inequalities in this town is one of our most important priority as far as I'm concerned, and this fits that. I think also it's also important to remind ourselves that this was one of the first. It was really the first major procurement contract after the council signed the climate emergency declaration, and so it was really important that that was a major element of the consideration of getting a result that addressed the climate emergency that we're faced with. I think that's been happening here. It was part of the selection process, and I'm really pleased to see that being delivered. So, I mean, there's a lot. It's going to be really hard work ahead. Really good to see it proceeding, and yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed. I don't know if this wouldn't, touch wood, and things proceed, and we get those facilities, which will be some of the best facilities, the best leisure facilities we've seen in this town. And I suppose one of the things that's always worth repeating is that by delivering quality facilities, that investment, in a sense, of investment state, is getting people in, spending their money, increasing participation, means that over the course of the contract, this isn't costing the council taxpayers. Or, actually what would cost the council taxpayers would be not investing, seeing a decline in our services and additional costs. So, yeah, this is the right decision, and really pleased to see it bearing fruit. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hoskin. It's obvious that there is great demand for leisure services in Reading, relatively affluent town. So, we should make this a success both financially and for all those health benefits you talked about as well. Councillor Williams, I have a question.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, it's possible.
I'm sorry.
I had that happen very for me.
Would you?
I can't remember. I'm with you. So I do want to say thank you to Paul and Jim and all the guys at GLL and all of the guys that have transferred from Reading from RSL over to GLL, because they've been helping residents and ward councillors over in Palmer Park, specifically in my ward. So I wanted to say thanks to all those guys. And then I just wanted to ask a question, if I may, which is a bit detailed, so it's not a broad thing, right? Thanks for asking. The gym and the sports centre in Palmer Park will be closed for approximately 7 months, April till it reopens at the end of November or December. And the question is, what is the plan for the people who have memberships in that gym sports centre? Will they be offered access to the other facilities, or will they be offered a sort of membership fee holiday for that 6-month period?
Do you want to hold the questions until we get the ball together at the end? Councillor Hacker has got a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think it's declaring interest, but I am a member of GL, and my son does do the swim school, which is great. But it relates directly to something that you mentioned around reception facilities and having the opportunity to discuss things with you when they may be digitally excluded. Now, I get on very well with the app, I find it really easy. I book my aerobics quickly and promptly. My calendar is great. However, some people, and I have seen this across social media, really would benefit and really value the opportunity to speak to somebody on the phone. A problem I had with some investments meant that I couldn't actually get through to anyone and had to do all it in the investment centre. So that could have been dealt with quickly on the phone. It took me 10 minutes instead of me having to go all the way down to room B. So I just wondered, as a side to having the reception, which is great and very useful, will the opportunity for people to actually ring the leisure centres and speak to somebody rather than having to travel in to resolve any issues or ask any questions?
Thanks, Councillor Hacker. Does any other councillors have questions for GLL that they can answer in one sort of bunch of questions? If not, then we'll pass those over. So Councillor Williams is asking about moving membership between gyms, leisure centres, and Councillor Hacker was asking about digital exclusion. So those two.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take the questions. Thank you, Councillor, for the questions. Appreciate that. So the feedback, to take the questions in order. So with the Palmer Park closure, we will implement, as we already done for South Reading members, we will do the same for Palmer Park members, as we will open up access to those that don't already have access to all 4 centres. They will have the ability to access all the other centres. The prices for that will be fixed, and they'll be able to enjoy the same membership entitlements that they have now for the same level of activities. So that will take place. Outside of that, we will, as we've been doing at South Reading already, we will talk individually to any members that there is a particular challenge for that to happen, and we will deal with those members on a one-to-one basis, as we've already been doing at South Reading. So we do have an established principle of being able to accommodate that in the borough, and we will look to put the same scheme in place, protect individuals where they have a particular need for us to do so, but ensure that the access is available to every member for all the other facilities during that period. And the benefit for those Palmer Park members by the time that Palmer does close is that they'll have a brand new gym to use at South Reading already, along with the gyms over at Rivermead and Meadway. So will be a new opportunity for them to be some of the first people into the new gym. But we will work with individuals where there's an individual case, and outside of that, everybody will have full access. So hopefully I've covered the answer there. In terms of Councillor Hacker, in terms of the journey, you're quite right. Not everybody has a digital access. What we've been able to put in place so far, which I think is working reasonably well and will continue to work, is we've been able to have our concierges are actually freed up to not be bogged down by what would have been functional processing work, to be able to engage directly person to person at our main receptions and pick up any of those type of inquiries. And we've got well established processes now, sort of 3 months in, for and particularly some of our older clientele where they may be not as digitally up to date or have access to it, where we will book them in person for the activity they want, and they can choose activity while they're in the centre, and that can be done for them. We've moved the phone calls and call centres now back locally during the height of the pandemic, and when we restarted after the last lockdown, we put the phone calls back into central hubs, so it would allow frontline staff to be able to deal with the immediate problems in front of them in centres and be able to engage with customers to ensure the COVID journey was safe and they understood the routes around the building, as it was one-way systems at that stage. We've now reverted back to phone calls being answered locally within the leisure centres, so you shouldn't have a need to get through to anyone that's not actually based in Reading and working in one of our centres and understands the local issues. And around that, to use a swim school as an example, we do have the home portal that parents can log into and follow their child's progress and leave information in there for teachers. So hopefully, I think we have a combination of 3 or 4 items that will help with that on those journeys. And hopefully I haven't missed anything in those questions, as the sound did jump in and out a bit. So I do apologise if I've missed anything in those questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. I think we've got your answers. And thanks for that. It's quite comprehensive. Councillors, anyone else? I mean, have you not? Oh, Councillor Mitchell.
Just a brief one. Obviously, commend everything that's been said both by GLL and the councillors here. It's a great boost for me. We probably endorse the benefit, both public health benefit and fiscal structural benefits to the town. I noticed that the financial implications, the figures are still dependent on 1.5 million grant that's secured from Sport England. I didn't see any timetable, but I just wondered if you could give us some clarity on the expectations around the bid and likelihood of timescale for should we be successful in getting that.
Thanks for that. I think that's probably a question for Councillor Hoskin, isn't it?
I think it's really a question for the
Would you like to?
Well, she has briefed me, but there may have changed in the last week or so gone.
Thank you. I'm just going to clarify the question because it's a bit difficult to hear. Is it the timetable for the Sport England bid?
Yes, it's timetable for the bid. Obviously, it's dependent on their decision. But I'm just curious to know when we will know as a council when that money hopefully is secured. Because obviously there are implications if it's not necessarily spending goes up and we don't get that as well.
Yep. So we submitted the bid a good few months ago now. So we're waiting for that final decision from Sport England, and I would expect that to be coming in fairly shortly. And then obviously once we know the decision, then we'll need to come back to committee to report the outcome of it. Our gut instinct is it's imminent, that decision, but because of the length of time it's been in the system.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Donna, can I just follow up on it? So is it right to say it's not a we've submitted this, we've heard nothing, and then we're just going to get a yes or no? Presumably there has been ongoing discussions between us and Sport England that give us the certain level of confidence that this is going to happen, right? Is that yes, hopefully?
Yes, we've had ongoing dialogue with Sport England, and they continue to be engaged on a very regular basis, particularly around the builds. So, this is also a two-step process, and this is the final step. We're awaiting the final decision.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for your question. Anyone else? Anything? So, if not, then thanks very much for GML colleagues for coming along. Just remains, and thanks for Donna. It just remains for us to look at the recommended action on this report on paragraph 2. There's 6 there. You can read them for yourself, but we're basically acknowledging that commenced. We're acknowledging that we've successfully received 160, just over 161,000. We're going to allocate that to the Neighbourhoods Leisure Centre on behalf of the council. We're thanking GLL for the presentation. We're noting the submission of the application for 1.5 million, which we just talked about, and we basically then have some delegation for that. So, is everyone happy to agree with the recommended actions on paragraph 2?
Agree.
Thank you, councillors. Thanks very much. Okay, that took a while. So we remember a while ago we said 15. Before 15 was like a week. The playing pitch strategy, item 15, we're going to take next. So we've got Ben, who is going to hopefully present that report.
So, thank you, Chair. So the council appointed a company called For Global several years ago, actually, to undertake a load of work to produce the playing pitch strategy, and we did that in association with Sport England, who co-funded that piece of research work, which included consultation with local clubs and regular meeting with national governing bodies. Now, we were looking to launch the playing pitch strategy very much as we entered into the pandemic, which meant that we were very unclear about what impact that was going to have on sport generally for, we thought, probably the next 6 months or so, but has actually turned out to be a couple of years. But we used Sport England methodology and the methodology that came from the national governing bodies to identify what the demand for the essentially grass pitch sports, what that demand would be in 2036, and in Reading that related to football, hockey, Gaelic football, rugby, lacrosse, and Australian rules. And as I said, the main point of the plan was to identify what the requirement was likely to be in 2036 using our best polished crystal balls, and then demonstrate how we could actually provide it, and then allow us to work towards that provision over the subsequent 15-16 years. Now, we will be consulting with local clubs and national governing bodies on a regular basis. We're intending to do that formally every 3 years, so that we are able to amend the provision and our predictions as to what we're going to actually require. So the plan isn't something definitive saying this is exactly what's going to be in every place, but it is as good a prediction as that we're able to make. there's been really significant changes in the way that football is played over the last probably 10 or 15 years. And this isn't just about the numbers of people that are playing, but also how people are playing, and what the FA are achieve. So in the past, it was very much we would have a football pitch marked out for an 11-a-side game, and pretty much whatever the age range would make do with those, unless they were very, very young, in which case we'd put them on smaller pitches. But the FA has a very clear outline of the size of pitches for a whole range of sizes, no, a whole range of ages of children, youth, up to adults. And that means that as we provide pitches of an appropriate size, we're going to need to change what we are providing where, a bit like one of those games where you try to make a picture by sliding tiles round to get the right picture. The overall aim is to provide higher quality pitches in the right places. And as we improve the quality, what we should be finding is that we'll have more people that are wanting to participate in those sports and participate in physical exercise. But also, as we improve the quality, we will be able to accommodate more pitches on each, more games on each pitch. So there's maybe a slightly unhelpful way of actually describing pitches of being either poor standard, standard, or good standard. And the standard will, for adults, will support two games a week, which isn't a huge amount if you consider that a football pitch is somewhat larger than an acre. A high quality pitch will be able to support 3 or maybe more, and as we move through to an artificial turf pitch, as opposed to it accommodating 2 games, which is 3 hours, we would expect one of those pitches to be used for 30 to 40 hours a week, which allows not only a high quality sport to be played, but also means that we should be able to free up quite a lot of space for other activity, or as the demand for sport grows, that we're not taking up or using up other free space, which means that other recreational or environmental use can be made of those, can be made of that space. There's significantly less change in the other sports, with a small growth expected in rugby and in hockey. With both of those sports, we will be looking to work with clubs to either access funding or find ways of organically growing what is already being provided through schools, through things like community use agreements. And we will also be looking to work with a cricket club to bring at least one of the wickets in Reading back into use, so that we are able to provide cricket within our parks and open spaces estate. I think it's also worth noting that the largest change, as I said, was in football. There's really significant funding that is available through the Football Association, Premier League, and FA through the Football Foundation, and they've produced an improvement plan that aligns or very much mirrors the playing pitch strategy, and will allow us to access considerable funding, or rather it will allow us with other clubs or organisations to access funding to make the improvements. And the aim, therefore, is to make the change without a significant call on the council's funding. With the, as I said, with the other sports, there will be opportunities for us to work with those clubs and we would anticipate changes being made would be within the means of the clubs that are wanting to set up or move, or indeed move within to Reading. So the actual plan itself gives quite a bit of detail as to what changes we are anticipating to make to the different age groups for football, the different sports, and also identifying that we would be wanting to increase the supply of artificial turf pitches across the borough, and where we do not have clear plans of where these could actually be sited, because there's an awful lot of other considerations to be made. We do want to be spreading these across the borough, with them in sort of northeast, southwest of the borough. I think it's probably easiest at this point, given the detail that's within the report, that I just answer questions that are raised from people looking at it.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I'm going to call Councillor Hacker first, just to address the previous slight error I made with the order. Councillor Hacker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ben. Not many people know, but I'm actually a big fan of cricket. Grew up watching it as my dad played. So I do have a couple of questions around the cricket pitches and provision. So great to hear it mentioned, great to see it in the report. There was mention of the Kensington Park wickets, and almost as if by chance, somebody recently contacted me who runs Kensington Park Cricket Club, which is lovely to hear that the area is being used for cricket, because historically it was obviously a cricket pitch for Huntley and Palmers with the pavilion, which I vaguely remember from when I was very little. I just wondered around what kind of investment there's going to be, because I did see in the report that there is vandalism at Kensington Park and there is potential for it to be moved. However, sometimes I think that if it's not in great condition, it's not going to be well used, and therefore people think it's okay to damage it, whereas if it was well used, maybe there'd be a bit more respect for it. So I just wondered what's happening around investment, because obviously cricket does reach a different community than football, and it's just great to see the different types of uses, because I know Kensington Park is well used for football as well, but particularly my interest is in cricket and particularly Kensington Park. So an update on if there's going to be any upgrades to that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hacker. I didn't call Councillor Hosking, which was in the site, but if we go for Councillor Williams first, unless you want to. Yeah. Okay, Councillor.
So I'll get the end next.
If you might want to ask you, but one place to what you say.
Okay, well, I don't really care.
I've written down what I'm going to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, Councillor Williams.
Go on then. I'm going to have a go. Thank you very much, and thank you to the lead councillor for letting me go first. Actually, I'll do a few more thanks. Thank you very much to Mr. Stainsbury for the report, and he also was very helpful with a rapid briefing to me before the meeting as well. So thanks for that. Sport is vital. It's not just physical health, but mental health as well. And I think this report is a really important one. It's a little disappointing that it only contains the sports which it contains. For example, no tennis, no basketball, no bowls. But as Mr. Stainsbury made clear, the pitches were covered with the ones we have the funding to cover. We simply didn't have the money to extend to every single sport within Reading. That's a shame, but that's what it is. It's a little bit hard reading through the report and looking at all the changes to the pitches to see exactly what the strategic vision is. We go from 6 pitches at Allocation and playing fields near me, for example, down to 3, and I don't fully understand why all those changes are needed, but I'm happy to take it that the analysis and the trend of all those is right, and the officers have done all the work and they fully understand what's happening there. But here's my but. It then moves on to suggest that a significant strand of the strategic direction we should be taking is more plastic pitches. And it would take a really detailed ecologist's report to persuade me that after declaring a climate emergency, that the future is plastic. Now, there is a clear argument being made that plastic pitches can be much more intensively used, freeing up other land, potentially to plant trees on, potentially to do any other leisure facility that we wanted. But those are just potentials, and the implementation of significant numbers of plastic pitches also have the potential to do significant environmental harm. So I'm going to try and be clear, but I'm finding it difficult to get through here. It may be the right thing to do. I am in no way convinced it's the right thing to do by this report, which doesn't contain the evidence, the analysis or the detail around what the environmental impact would be of removing a significant amount of pitches towards plastic. If all of that evidence and analysis was in front of us, then I may approve or disapprove, but I could make my decision. As far as I'm aware, we haven't consulted the council's ecologists on this significant strand. So we need, I think personally, Joe, we need those benefits, those costs clearly weighed down, clearly set out in front of us. So I don't think that this isn't particularly a committee where we want to vote against anything, but I'm not happy with this strategy going forward with that specific strand of plastic pitches as a key element. But like I said, I might be if the evidence was put before me. I hope I got through that.
I did, Councillor Williams, thank you. So, I mean, I've got Councillor Rowland, but there's specific points there, and I wondered if Councillor Hoskin might want to, and Ben Stainsby combined, can persuade Councillor Williams of their case, or what do you want to say?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I mean, it does fit very much with what I was going to say. Ben Stainsby was getting a pretty comprehensive overview of the strategy. I mean, I think I've been pushing for this sometimes, as Councillor Williams, Josh says, this is a really important strategy, you know, providing the outdoor playing pitches that our residents need in order to be able to do anything. It's really, really important. But it's actually a lot more difficult than I kind of thought when we were talking about this, as Ben said a few years ago. So we're constrained by particularly size of the town and the green spaces and what's there, because and I think it's even written there, what we don't want to do in order to meet increasing demand, in order to make sure you've got enough playing pitch space, you don't actually want to be then chopping down trees or impinging on really important parkland, which is really important to people as well. And Reading being a time constrained urban authority, that is the reality we live in. The other constraint is the obvious one in terms of resources. So what this strategy does, I think, is it's going to be requirements, the changing demand, particularly the increased requirement for football playing pitches for kids as opposed to adults, and I think as Ben said, the chess piece is about trying to make that work, because it is a space situation. So I mean, I think Councillor Josh Williams makes a really good point in terms of environmental impacts. I think we can show more because of why that's important, because by utilising those space more effectively, I think it's important that playing pitches themselves are not particularly environmentally fantastic places anyway. They're very well, lots of fertiliser put down, stuff. They're not a very teeming wildlife places, but the other parts of our parks are. So by maximising the space, making really good facilities local to people's communities as well, which is actually really important. People just walk to really good playing pitches, they're in communities, means that we are able to protect and nurture the rest of our green spaces in the way that we want, whilst also making sure that we have adequate playing pitch provision. So I mean, that's very much what I'm committed to. I mean, I think in terms of delivering some of this, it is about securing resource. The other thing that's really important is that this is a strategy which will is designed to align with the football authorities that have money that we can bid for. With it in place, you can secure funding. Councillor Hacker talks about cricket, which is really important. It's been a somewhat under. Not, I think it's say it has been a bit neglected. Let's face it. I think that's not a controversial thing to say, and that's something that we could sort of put more focus on. It's here within the plan, and the partnering element of this strategy is actually really important. I think that's sort of stuck in there, but actually I think working in partnership with clubs to bring maybe wickets back into use or about pavilions and stuff like that is actually really important, because it's getting the best use out of the facilities that exist, but haven't necessarily been as well looked after as they could do, largely due to the fact that council's finances are so constrained. So yeah, I mean, I think the ecology impacts, a point well made by Councillor Williams, and it is important that we demonstrate why this is the right strategy. I think this is why that is. Whether we can get any sort of things, maybe what's happened in other councils we can look at in terms of demonstrate that as well. But it's also, I know Council Road's got lots of rewilding, lots of plans for our parks, which are really exciting. So I think that Prospect Park, all the stuff we want to do can't happen if we expand our playing pitches and not using artificial patches. So, you know, that's the kind of rationale why it's such a really important strategy.
Okay, that was good. Councillor Hoskin, you've filibustered Councillor Rowland there. They've got a number of people want to ask questions on this. So perhaps we get to the end of the councillors, maybe we go back to Ben Stainsby then on specific points like cricket and plastic pitches if he's got anything to add. But first we'll go through the councillors if that's all right. So Councillor McNaughton is the next. We can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm really disappointed that outdoor grass sports, not one mention's been mentioned about the green bowling, outdoor bowlings. We have a very large amount of senior citizens who play this sport. We're going to have it taken away anyway from the sports centre when the new sports centre comes up. So I really think we should be looking at age group, my age group, people who play that game.
50.
We don't seem to have
40s.
40, yeah.
40 to 50.
I'll make you some samosas next time. Yeah, so I think, you know, I am disappointed that it's not been mentioned.
Okay,
I'm glad all the cricket's been mentioned.
I mean, am I right in saying, Councillor Hoskin, this, you know, there are lots of sports that are really important, and people have mentioned a couple of them. This report addresses a subset of those, which is because it's the playing pitch strategy, and therefore doesn't address tennis or ground ring bowling. I mean, it's not because we've forgotten about them, but because they're in a different report. They might be in a different report, but not, you know, this is a pitch strategy report.
That's absolutely right. And particularly the ones that sit within local parks, they're really important, close to us, and support them is really important. So it's not that something that you know that's been forgotten by the council. It's just not part of the playing pitch strategy.
And that's also mentioned croquet. Got a croquet club in Caversham up in Albert Road. Shout out for that. Who did I have next? Councillor Singh, but there's someone before that whose name I can't read. I wrote down. But you can go next while I try and figure it out.
Thank you, Chair. So my query is around the cricket pitches. Myself, I cricket program, my nose playing cricket. So and with England losing today, we need more cricket pitches to win the World Cup. So basically, the one thing I find is in the document I was trying to go is we don't have a pitch booking system as well. I think there's an opportunity to generate some revenue. I know the neighbouring councils have a pitch booking system where people can go and book a pitch, and that generates revenue for the council. Slough has 6-7 pitches. I remember booking a pitch there, and you know, there's some. And it's constant, it's fully booked most of the time. So there's an opportunity to generate some revenue as well. Along with that, also this facilities needs to be arranged around the pitches. It's not just pitch, and you need to have facilities. So I really like to see that integrated as well. The booking system, the revenue angle, whether there's an opportunity for us to invest and get some return of investment as well over the time. So which helps the council, helps the local community as well, and it ticks all the boxes for me if we think about that.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ben, for the report. I'm guilty of asking a very ward-focused question. It's to do with Wicketwood changing facilities at the park on Basingstoke Road. Tucked away on page 330, there's some good news that said needs to be refurbished or replaced, and it says that funding has been secured and South Reading FC are involved with the early stages. It's relevant because we were contacted, I think Councillor Anderson as well was contacted by the vice chair of one of the local leagues just before COVID, and we did raise the condition of the facility, and it would be good to be sort of like kept in the loop, really. You know, this because this is the first I've read now it's at committee stage. Also, with the question that Councillor Williams, if you don't mind, Chair, I'm a bit of a saddo for listening to old podcasts of planning meetings, and there was I think it was Queen Anne's development where they had all weather pitching, and the bloke that was being grilled, the bloke giving the report, actually went into quite a lot of detail, and about the degrading of all weather pitches, how it's no good for drainage, and how it gets into the local water system. So yeah, I know your question. Very good point. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've also got Councillor O'Connell.
Thank you. When I read through this, it was also the plastic pictures that jumped out at me. I do see the benefits, don't get me wrong. I'm not sort of just jumping on the word plastic. The usage numbers and the amount of gains that you could get through, I can really see how that could up and be beneficial to the community. And also, I'm presuming that there would be positives on the anticipated life expectancy of pitches, you know, that they would stay in use for many, many years. But I have the questions about, mine was more about sort of drainage, because plastic tends to be a more impermeable surface. I'm wondering, and again, you're probably going to be able to reassure me then that technology allows the water to drain away, and that there's not going to be sort of any increased impacts on standing water or flooding. And I did wonder whether or not this was going to be new plastic that's being created for Reading, or whether or not there's any scope for recycled surfaces. I know that there's been a lot of, in our playgrounds, I think some of the surfaces we're using are using recycled materials in the children's play areas. You know, is there any scope for that kind of stuff here to sort of help mitigate those impacts? Also, have we got any plans for the Midway Rec up in Tilehurst? It's a very big, used to be pitches, or perhaps get a briefing or something on Midway.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands, come back in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. While Councillor Hoskin addressed a lot of the issues about the environment and about the playing pitches, and done it quite well, I think we all have a number of serious concerns, and obviously within my portfolio, we deal with obviously the parks and open spaces. It really is a good thing, I think, that we brought this strategy forward, that we know the position that we're in, and we know that come 2036 with increasing populations, we're going to have continued demand. And I think that on balance, we really need to, the plastic, I think, puts as many, couples up on the back of my head that it does everyone. It's not a word we want to hear, and so it's something that really can be a almost something we'll have to look at on a case-by-case basis. I would say that in some situations it might be more appropriate, where in others it might not be. But we do have to look at an increasing population through 2036 and a very finite and small footprint. This weekend we had the climate action event in town, and someone came up to me and was asking why we couldn't be putting more wildflowers in pitch areas and planting more trees and everything. And I think in the middle of COP26, I think we're all in the mood to plant wildflowers everywhere and plant more trees as we can. But it is, again, that balance, and it is such a fragile balance that that we have to consider what impact those more fruitful, biodiverse areas can have, along with something which is less, maybe less biodiversity beneficial, but can also provide so many benefits as far as our health and healthy communities and those kinds of issues. So I really think it is a balancing act, and I think that this report can really be a tool for the council to go forward, and as Ben's laid out, it will be reviewed every 3 years. I know he's got a crystal ball, but I don't think it's as good as 2036. And so I think by reviewing it, we can continue to look at that balance, and we all have to struggle with those answers. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor William. Then we've got a bunch of really important points there. I don't know if I want to call on you, but basically we've got go back to what Councillor Hacker asked about cricket. Plastic. There's a lot of concern about plastic pitches, their impact on flooding and biodiversity and all the rest of it. Can they be recycled material? Good point from Councillor Singh about pitch booking system. Maybe that would not be in this. Maybe it should be in this report. And then Councillor Lang did some ward work about Meadway Rec, but we're going to forgive him on this occasion. So if you've got anything to, you can come back on any of those points, please.
I have. Unfortunately, I've written the points as though they're made in a list. I shall try to draw them together and not jump about. And if I've missed something, please come back and sort of point out the error of my ears. So if I just take sort of some of the individual items first, so that talking about cricket and booking systems, is that generally we have found that if we work with clubs and clubs are able to take on a venue as a site as a home venue, the buildings will get used as both as a changing room, but as importantly as a clubhouse. And so we have all sorts of other bits and pieces of activity that then follow on from that. And with some of them, we will often find that there'll either be a youth club or there'll be an adult club. And what we say is that if you were a club that were using it, for instance, on a Saturday, they have to make it available for league use on the Sunday. And that allows the club to charge the visiting team the same amount as the council would charge, which then gets sort of income into the coffers of the club. And generally, one would hope that you would get an improvement in the quality of the facilities, and you would get a virtuous circle. And normally what we do is that we put the leagues in touch with the club so that they're able to make that booking direct, and leagues generally have the best grasp of what the demand is. And where we have been speaking to local cricket clubs, we also discuss with the local cricket governing body about what the demand is to ensure that we maximise the use of the space. And that was a process that we were following at Whitley Wood. Unfortunately, since this report was written, that we've actually had a break-in at Whitley Wood that has caused some fairly significant damage. And in speaking with the club, there is a desire to do some remodelling, which means the cost of the work is significantly greater than the ones that we had originally envisaged. And we're now working through what other funding opportunities there are so that we can try and do all of the work in one fell swoop. So that's a bit of a mixture of increasing ambition, some further problems that have been involved, and a desire to take maximum opportunity, take maximum advantage of opportunities that arise. Meadway, the open space at Meadway, if we have an inquiry from a local club that is looking to make use of space, then we may come back and revisit what could be done actually at Meadway Rec. However, just opening it back up for sport use would mean that it would likely be that we wouldn't have the sufficient resources to look after others, and it would probably cost a significant amount to prepare that for sport use. So we are very much dependent upon other organisations coming forward with ideas and ability to access funding, and also they're looking to be able to reduce sports provision elsewhere to realise the sort of environmental benefits of doing so. The majority of the questions I think that were being asked were about the plastic pitches. They certainly do come with their own set of issues and concerns. One of the going back to the point about it would have been helpful to have had an assessment of the environmental impact, or rather the biodiversity impact of building a plastic pitch. I think it's really clear that the artificial pitch itself is very poor at sustaining or providing habitat. Grass football pitches themselves are not particularly great, in fact probably pretty poor at providing a lot of habitat, but it very much depends what the space is used. Any pitch that is closed, it is how that space that is used that will make the biggest difference to the net biodiversity gain. And what this report doesn't do is then look at how space that is freed up is subsequently used, so that it makes making that assessment very difficult. Now, I think there are several concerns with the artificial turf pitches. One is the how you treat the material when you if it's replaced or closed, and care needs to be taken to make sure that that material as much as possible is recycled or appropriately disposed of, which we will control through the contract that is let to deal with the pitches at the end of their life. There are other elements that we'd also need to consider when we're actually citing them, is so that we would not be wanting to put them immediately next to watercourses, so that any material that gets knocked off them actually gets washed into the watercourses. And interestingly, and it's fairly helpful that this particular fad appears to have died away, was that there was a campaign a few years ago to actually be injecting the rubber granules into football pitches to actually improve them, which was almost a recipe for random spreading of the microplastics. Unfortunately, Reading, that wasn't a course of action that Reading took. Now, what we will need to be doing is making sure that we're careful with how we're siting pitches, that we're putting a suitable runoff around the pitches that isn't grass, so that we're not getting the material spread everywhere. That we try to do things like put in grates or matting that you use before you come off the pitch. Simple things like provision of bins, so that if you have got it inside your boots, that you've got somewhere to empty it. And there's a series of fairly simple measures that are available. The rubber crumb that is used is recycled, is actually recycled tyres, and we will be specifying tyres that come from I was going to say EU, but UK and the EU, because the regulations relating to those mean that there are not some of the nasty additives in the rubber that is involved, that is put in some tyres in other countries. In terms of drainage, the pitches drain are in effect, the top of them is porous. They're placed on a large stone base that also will hold quite a lot of water and let it gently percolate away. And in fact, the artificial pitches tend to drain better than grass pitches. So, for instance, at Whitley, up at South Reading, we have a real problem with pitches there not being usable for large parts of the winter because they are clay. We get a large amount of water runoff from the Cowsey, and despite numerous attempts to introduce drainage, it still doesn't work particularly well. So I'm just going through my list now to see which bits that I've actually missed. Just bowls wasn't within the sports that we were looking at. The feedback that we've had in the past is that there is capacity at the outdoor bowls clubs that are within the borough, and we will continue to work with those clubs to ensure that they can continue to operate and support them best we can. We effectively give the clubs free use of facilities, in that they will be meeting the cost of energy and our cost of making sure that they continue to stand and to be there, but not charging a rent. There was I think there was also a question raised as to why there was a reduction in the number of pitches, specifically at Crescent Road, Hamilton Centre, and they are predominantly 9v9 pitches. And within the strategy, if I recall correctly, it is predicted that there's going to be a reduction in the demand for 9v9 pitches as we introduce other size pitches. So any of those changes really reflect just a net change in demand for football in Reading, which very much reflects the change in demand for football across the borough. I hope that's covered the points, but please advise of anything that I've missed.
Thanks very much, Ben. I mean, it seems to me that we have got a flavour that councils want to make sure that the balance of providing utility for young people and adults to play sport, to play football and other sports throughout the borough in what is a borough where the green space is much contended for, versus wanting to maintain biodiversity, not wanting to cover those green spaces with artificial materials that damage the environment, etc. That's what we're getting, isn't it? And I think we need to bear that in mind as we go forward. We'll be reviewing the strategy periodically, and that's something that no doubt will be a recurring theme.
So, sorry, Chair, that's reminded me of something that I have missed, which was that the assessment where planning applications are made or proposals are made for the development of individual pitches, artificial turf pitches, at that point a more detailed assessment would be undertaken of the impact.
Thanks. And I would say further to that as a parent, someone who's a child who plays on these pitches, there's over the years there's been a lot of matches called off in areas because of waterlogging. Actually, the grass areas are kind of they're not good for drainage. Some of the areas are not well drained, and then that does affect an awful lot of people because they can't do their sport for a week or so. So there's a balance between utility and the natural environment, obviously. I would say, as far as bowls is concerned, Councillor, I think probably in Reading we've got the only bowling green on an island in a river in the country. I can't imagine there's another one. It's a unique thing.
Yeah, Sir Francis Drake.
Okay, so We're on to the recommended actions. Hopefully those questions have been answered. We don't have time to carry on asking anything. So we move on to item 15, recommended actions, which are in section 2 probably. Yes, they are. So actions are printed there. Do we want to go ahead and accept the report, etc.? Is that right? Okay, we'll agree that. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ben, for those long answers. There's a lot of interest in that item. We've managed to do 2 items by 8:04. We're doing really well. Come on, guys.
Thank you.
I know. Thanks for trying to keep Councillor Hoskin from his engagement. Okay, we're now on to item number 8, which is Reading Rent with Confidence. Item number 8, which is Reading Rent with Confidence scheme. Yasmin, to introduce this report. Go, Yasmin.
Thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you and good evening to everyone. The Reading Rent with Confidence scheme. This report is an update on the Reading Rent with Confidence scheme and on the new website. The Reading Rent with Confidence scheme is a discretionary scheme, and the purpose of it is to give tenants in the private rented sector greater confidence in the properties that they rent, to raise standards and to enable landlords to market good accommodation to those tenants. We've been working with a specialist provider to design a new website and also to update the scheme in order to simplify the process. The scheme is application and inspection based, and accreditation is given on completion of this process. The new website will be much more interactive, and it will allow landlords to update their property details on the website. I've provided some screenshots within the report to give you an idea of what the report will look like, what the website will look like. In addition to the website, we have 12 safety Sean videos. These are very short animated videos relating to hazards in the home and potential issues during tenancy. So it enables tenants to be aware of potential issues they may come across, and also a bit about their responsibilities in understanding the difference between, for example, condensation versus damp and mould in a property. And it also provides information to landlords in terms of their responsibilities as well. Whilst these videos will sit as part of the website, they will also be used independent of the website to provide information and education, both to tenants and landlords. The proposal is for the website to be launched in the new year, and that a report comes back to this committee in March, when I will be able to show you in more detail the actual website and how it works. I hope that's okay if there's any questions.
Thanks. Councillor Anderson, do you want to get first go at this?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to give my thanks to Yasmin and her team, because it's a big piece of work. It's a big council right move for the website. But our residents will be able to go on there with the confidence that they're in our Rent with Confidence scheme. We know that just over a quarter of homes in Reading are private rented. So I think it's a really great idea. And at 4.5, you can see the long list of criteria to be part of this scheme. And I know that landlords, good landlords, are keen to be involved with this, and it really pushes to make sure that we can promise high quality homes for our residents. And I'd also just like to thank the university, who I know have been liaising on this, and obviously private rented homes is very important for them. And I think the Safety Sean videos are really great. If you haven't had a chance, go to the link and have a watch. I'll definitely be sharing them with residents when they get in touch with me with casework. And I'm really proud that the team were able to secure funding for that. So just my thanks to the team because it's a massive piece of work and I really look forward to it being launched.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Williams, you want to speak?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much to officers and to the lead member for introducing this. I can tell people have been working really hard on this. It's really important. It is a key element, I think, to the sort of private rented strategy. I'm not sure I'm using that word. But I think we also need to be honest, back in 2017, when this first sort of emerged in a very different version, there was little take up, it says in the report. But then in 2019, there were just 34 properties signed up. So I do think we need to be honest, this has failed before, lots of work has been done, we all want this to succeed now. So my question, which is probably for the lead member, is what are the success criteria for this? How will we know when reports come back if this is working or not? It's not working if 34 properties have signed up, but where is the success marker? And then how are we benchmarking and how will we know how this is going? And I guess as a little additional one, I mean, we all want this to succeed, so if there's anything that members can do other than sharing it, let us know.
Thank you. Yes. Councillor Anderson, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Williams. I appreciate the point that he is making. Of course, there's been a lot of capacity issues within the team, especially during COVID, and the focus primarily is always on the road landlords. And, you know, we've had a lot of successful cases. This has been reported to this committee in terms of the work, the great work that they do there. So this is, I wouldn't say been a side project because it's really important to think about that proactive approach. But I would say that, you know, it's one of the things that had to go on the back burner in terms of prioritising because of the lack of capacity that the team had. But as I say, something they've been working on and they're mindful of the 2017 launch. And it just mentioned it was a soft launch. It wasn't, you know, a big all out. We didn't have a budget line as such that was hugely committed to this. So, you know, I suppose in terms of reassurance, you have mindful reassurance that it's a commitment of this administration in terms of the private rental sector. It's really important. And as I mentioned, we're partnering with the union on a lot of the work we do. So obviously they bring a lot of resources. In terms of member engagement, I think it would be great to share the site when it does launch. And I know we have to press releases and really push with our landlords. I think in terms of setting those outcomes, that's quite hard at this stage. And actually, I have to apologise to the admin because this report wasn't due to track until we launched, but I thought it was helpful to bring forward. I'm sorry, Yasmin's had to wait till 8 to come along tonight, so more sorry to Yasmin. But yeah, so you know, it's a bit premature to bring this, but I thought it's a really good piece of work that everyone should be aware of. And when we go live, it means that we can really push on it. So I'm not going to set a kind of KPI here, but I hope you do feel reassured that, you know, the issues we've had in terms of capacity, you know, we feel in a much stronger place to go live with this. With it overall, and I'm sure Yasmin might come as well, because obviously I've only been since May. But you know, it's a really important issue as you rightly outline. When we do go to launch, I'll get in touch with members in terms of what actions can be taken to really push it out there and really go big, and hopefully we will get more traction.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. I mean, let's carry on getting reports back on this. That's, you know, we're all, you said you're supportive, I think we're all supportive. We all recognise that, you know, we've got a huge number of people renting. You know, let's make sure they can rent the best quality accommodation in the private sector that we can help to make it. So yeah, we will come back and we'll keep an eye on it. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's more a practical point. I obviously fully agree with the principle behind it and giving tenants assurances that they richly deserve. I see from the report that the scheme is application and inspection based. I'm just interested to know what sort of criteria, what level of assurance we're getting from landlords before their properties are featured on this, what sort of checks or balances they have to go through.
Yeah, it's mostly outlined at 5 in terms of the criteria to get onto the scheme. So it kind of outlines what is required in terms of when we do inspect, what we would expect to see. So stuff about the EPC, stuff about carrying out certain checks, deposits being protected, expecting a high quality private sector home. But I don't know if Yasmin might want to expand on that, but I think that covers it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I saw all this. It's just that obviously the council's reputation is at stake here as well, and we need to make absolutely sure that we don't inadvertently have any overlap which is beginning to appear on this, despite their assurances. That was not my only concern, so thank you.
A good point, Yasmin. Have you got good point? Sorry, thank you. You've got anything to add on that?
Thank you. I think Councillor Emberson's picked up most of the points. 4.5 in the report sets out the criteria that we would expect, and we will do a thorough inspection of the property and also the paperwork that the landlords have in relation to tenancies and compliance. We will also, if we get complaints about the condition of the property or misinformation that's being provided, we would look at that point to investigate that and, if necessary, remove that property from the accreditation scheme also.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else on the list? If not, we we'll move to the recommended action, action 2, which is basically noting this report and noting the fact we're going to get another report, which is probably what Yasmin expected to have to, what she expects to have to bring it in March. Everyone's happy with that? We'll move on. Thank you very much. Thanks, Yasmin. Next item is item 9, which is a briefing on the social housing charter and social housing white paper that the government have issued last November, a year ago now. Sarah, this is magically here. Sarah Tappert, do you want to introduce this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report is an information item to ensure that Housing, Neighbourhoods and Leisure Committee are kept up to date as to the changing landscape around social housing. It introduces the social housing white paper, as you say, known as the Charter for Social Housing Residents, published in January of this year. Outlined in 7 commitments, the white paper provides a framework for reform. However, the detail of many of the proposals require further development and engagement with the sector, which they expect to take several years. Some elements require primary legislation, for example, the Building Safety Bill, currently proceeding through Parliament, and the subject of a following item on tonight's agenda. For the remaining elements, the government has stated that they will legislate as soon as practicable. However, whilst we await further information, the Housing Service will, where possible, continue to prepare internally and with our tenants for the expectations set out in the Charter. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Kept it short.
Yes, thank you. You're reading the room. I mean, this is a briefing paper, really, and it's just information. We're not really deciding anything, but if you have a bit of chit chat if you want. But does anyone have to contribute, or Councillor Anderson, do you want to just comment briefly?
Well, I think you've all read it clearly. It's obviously an important piece of work. I think it's one to keep an eye on for new Secretary of State in terms of, this white paper was quite a while back and implementing it, but you can see what the council is doing in terms of the 7 commitments which are outlined. So yeah, welcome report and watch this space.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks, Sarah. The next item, item 10. Oh yes, sorry. We're simply noting that. Okay, does anyone not want to know that?
Thank you.
Item 10, which is another briefing really on the 2 items of legislation, the Fire Safety Act 2021 and the Building Safety Bill. Again, Nick Burston.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
This report is another one for information. It provides an update on the new Fire Safety Act 2021 and the Building Safety Bill. The report sets out the main aspects of the legislation, the implications for social landlords and the actions that housing service is taking in preparation for that implementation. The Fire Safety Act was made law on the 29th of April 2021 and will come into force over the coming months. The exact date when that comes into force isn't known yet. This legislation follows the findings of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. The Building Safety Bill will sit alongside this legislation and subject to agreement will be enacted into legislation sometime in 2023. The report goes into a number of details on what's included within the Fire Safety Act and the Fire Safety Bill, and I'll leave members to take that on board, and if they have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks very much, Nick. Councillor Emerson.
I think Nick's comprehensively set out the report. It's quite a functional report, but it's obviously really important in light of Grenfell that we continue to look at it as a committee in terms of what the council is doing. And we know that we're invested in our council stock generally, but also specifically about making sure that we meet these standards expected, and it's a really important issue. So many thanks for the report.
Thanks. We've had reports on fire safety at this committee ever since the Grenfell disaster. I think it's something that members of this committee have always wanted to keep a close eye on, and it's good that this has come. I've got Councillor Shikali wants to comment, did you?
To comment on your time through. Having worked on the Institution of Civil Engineers review on constructive failure following the Grenfell Towers tragedy, I'm really pleased to see this new Fire Safety Act 2021 and the Building Safety Bill and the actions that our housing service has taken in preparation for implementation. The key things that I'm really excited about are the legal duties now imposed on building managers to discuss fire safety in buildings and with fire services, and to provide residents with their own excavation plans and to have professional training and qualifications for all fire inspectors. And I think it will have huge benefits to residents in Reading. It's really important the council does its part to kind of ensure that the private sector also meets us halfway. And I still know there are still privately owned properties in Reading who need to undertake this to ensure safety for their residents. And there's probably need to be some fair financial support for leaseholders and others affected by it. But I wanted to draw attention to and ask a query around it, on the impact on the council and the requirement of additional funding to support this endeavour. For example, as a council and housing association undertakes the works required, it will have an impact on their capital budget and their ability to provide more housing stock, as well as the 110k revenue cost already outlined in the report. I really welcome this Safety Act and the fire safety guidance of not only properties existing, but I look forward to seeing more on shared housing and flats and houses that have been converted from office blocks as well. It's very common in Reading.
Thank you, Councillor Shikali. Do you want to come back on that? Councillor Emerson?
Yeah, I think obviously this report kind of looks at what we're doing in terms of our own stock, but Councillor Shikali raises a really important point in terms of what is a leaseholder scandal, where we do have private owned homes and renters living in blocks where we still have cladding issues. And I know that the teams have been working in terms of liaising on those specific blocks. And looking to make sure that there is that investment in sorting cladding and modernising cladding where needed across Reading. But I think ultimately the government has failed on this, and I really hope that again the new Secretary of State fixes this as an issue, because it is a scandal, as Councillor Shikali outlined. So just fully support the comments she made, because it has a real impact on people who are living in these blocks. So look forward to the government pulling its finger out and committing to sorting out the leaseholder scandal that we currently have in light of the Grenfell tragedy.
Yeah, thanks for that. Has anyone else got any points they want to raise on the classical leaseholder payments for cladding? No? Okay. If not, then we can move to paragraph 2, recommended action. Again, we're just noting this report, which is very nice report on those 2 pieces of legislation. So thanks very much, Dick. Does anyone agree with that? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 11, which is the allocation scheme review. This is something we are asked to actually approve this evening, so it's really important that we push on this happen with this. That's Brian. Can you introduce this report then, Brian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So this report details the recent review of Reading Borough Council's allocation scheme. It includes the outcome of recent consultations, the recommended changes to the scheme and the timetable for the implementation. The report describes how a housing allocation scheme set out the rules to determine how priority is awarded for social housing and how properties are allocated. In addition to specific legal requirements fundamentally covered in the report, it discusses how, in considering a review of their schemes, local authorities can be flexible to their approach to ensure that housing allocations align with local and strategic priorities and meet the needs of residents and communities. As previously reported to HNL in March 2021, the review process began by carrying out workshops with members to discuss concerns with the current scheme and to consider broader priorities, getting feedback on the key issues recommended for change. Resulting from these workshops were 2 main themes were identified to help shape the review. And those themes were how we could use the allocation scheme to better build more sustainable communities, including tackling antisocial behaviour, and how we could make the scheme more clear and transparent for applicants. Following those initial conversations with councillors, we looked at what other local authorities are doing and what best practice exists in the arena, and a range of changes were developed to support the themes. The recommended changes were taken to Housing, Neighbourhoods and Leisure Committee in March 2021, so earlier this year, for approval to carry out a public consultation exercise. That exercise has now been complete. An 8-week consultation exercise was carried out in March and through to May of this year. We had a very good response rate to that, with the majority of respondents supporting the changes. This is summarised in the report and detailed further in Appendix 2. The amended scheme has now been drafted, and assuming it is adopted by HNL, it will be intended that these changes will be communicated to residents and an easy read guide developed to ensure that the scheme is clear to applicants and they're clearly able to understand it. It is planned that the implementation of the scheme will be phased over the next kind of few months, leading on till September 2022 to allow it to align with the introductions of a new housing IT system. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I mean, congratulations really on a really successful consultation. We can all agree that there's been quite good participation in it, and there's some interesting changes that I guess that do chime with people and people are engaged with. So yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Alison, comment?
Yeah, I just first want to pay tribute to the officers, because this isn't a small piece of work. You know, it's a huge piece of work that started before I was the lead for housing, and you know, there's still the implementation to do. So even if we sign on tonight, you know, there's still so much more for us to do. So I'm just really grateful, because I think these are really meaningful changes that will really make a difference to people on the housing band or current tenants and all Reading residents, really, because you know, firstly, the simplification of bands. I'm sure a lot of us have had casework where people are confused about what band they're on, how they can up a band, why they go down a band. So I think simplifying that will really make a big difference to people. And I know there's a big commitment from the team in terms of having that tip sheet that explains it and makes it really simple so people know where they are and what to expect. As well as that, we've got the adapted housing register, which will become separate to the overall general need register, which will be really meaningful. Because you know, I've had cases where people have said when they're bidding, they keep scrolling and scrolling, trying to find a bungalow, they can't find one. So having a separate register, you know, it seems like such a simple thing, but it's really impactful in people's lives. And I think the key worker quota is really positive as well. You know, I know the lead council for education has been approached by schools in terms of recruitment issues, and that's just one example of a key worker that would be eligible. So I think it's really important that we do prioritise that, you know, as a town in terms of the public sector, because you know we live in a very expensive place and housing is an issue that often drives people out of the town, which is not what we want. I could talk to each of the bullet points of proposed changes for ages, and I'm sure Brian would, but you know, I'm really grateful, and I think these are really meaningful changes for people. And I hope as many of us can attend the council training session, which will talk about what the new scheme means in less than 100 pages, because I know it's a long report to digest and understand, but you know, I hope it will make life easier for us all with casework, because I know it definitely help our tenants and potential tenants. So just really welcome the report, and thank you so much. Such a big piece of work, and I have no doubt it will need to be done again in a few years, and these things constantly push it. So thank you, Chair.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Anderson. So I've got Councillor Williams wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much to the officers and to the lead member. I fully support everything that Councillor Anderson has said. I just had one area that I wasn't quite comfortable that I understood properly. So if it's okay, I'll just ask a couple of questions, Chair. And the area is the proposal that applicants that have been previously evicted due to serious threatening or violent behaviours which have not been addressed do not qualify for Reading Borough Council housing register for a minimum period of 5 years, which could increase up to 10 on reasonable consideration of all relevant facts. So what I don't understand, Chair, I think I'd like to, is what does it mean when we say that the previous behaviour has not been addressed? What does that mean in practice? Who determines whether previous extremely poor behaviour has been addressed or not? And who determines whether a ban will last 5 years or 10? There's a significant difference, I think. And on what basis is that determination made? Because everything in the report is fantastic. I think it'll allow the council to do more and do better with what it has. So that's great. But I just didn't understand that area, and I didn't feel comfortable not understanding it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Connor, are you okay if I get an answer to that straight away? And then...
Because that was one of my concerns.
Okay, you go. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I picked up on the same thing. Mine was a slight adjunct to that, because what happens if the person who is doing the aggressive, violent behaviour has dependents? Because you know, then we could be creating additional problems and additional stresses. And my question as well was, you know, are we actually helping them? Are we actually offering them something, or are we telling them to go away and address their violent behaviour? So yeah, it was just a little bit of clarification around that point for me as well. But on the whole, to congratulate the officers and the lead councillor, that this was a really good piece of work, and it was quite clear throughout that you were really listening to residents and giving them a marvellous opportunity to actually have their say, and they did. And what they've come up with appears to be very creative, and the simplicity. I agree with you, Councillor Emerson, the simplicity of having a register for people with adapted housing needs. It's just marvellous. You know, there are some things that when you have the idea, you think, how did we not have that idea just years and years ago? It's so obvious and it's great.
Thanks, Councillor Connell. No one else has got any questions, so I think finally everyone's really supportive generally, but we've got a couple of questions that hopefully you voted. Do you want to come back on those, please?
Yes. So in regard to the sanctions for antisocial behaviour, I think in essence what that will be is an assessment on reapplication. So that already exists within the allocation scheme as it stands. We're increasing the length of time, and how that works is an assessment is carried out on the reapplication, and we are able to contact professionals who are involved with the individual, understand whether or not those kind of activities, whether or not there's been any kind of convictions for that type of behaviour since the previous time that they were banned from the register. So it's looking at the facts of the current situation and whether or not there's been any significant change to that. So it would be an assessment. It's likely that that will be carried out for short periods, but it's giving ourselves the opportunity to create that sanction for up to 10 years where we need to, because we have situations where people with very violent histories who are causing antisocial behaviours on our estates, who are able to reapply for housing without having addressed any of the previous behaviours, and may well have had convictions subsequent to their last time they were banned. So it's managing that. It's a very, very small cohort of individuals that we're talking about. I think the Equalities Impact Assessment makes clear that we've only had 4 individuals that we have applied the sanction to in the last kind of 5 years. So it's not a large number. In relation to the children, whether or not there's dependence, the dependence issue is we obviously wouldn't refuse to support someone who had dependence. Their support would come through alternative ways. It's likely that we can always carry out a homeless assessment and provide support and advice to anyone who with dependent children. And there's also the homelessness assessment that we would be looking to support individuals with who had no other options, who had dependent children. So there's a kind of range of options that we can look at, and because we may sanction someone through the housing register wouldn't necessarily mean that we cut off all avenues of support to help individuals find accommodation.
Thank you very much, Bryony. I think Councillor Anderson wants to comment on that.
Yeah, some of the bullets on this because there are so many, but I appreciate the concerns raised by councillors on that point. I think it's worth noting that in our consultation, that was one of the highest supported proposals at 76%, and ASB, serious ASB, just come up as an issue with all of us. But I do appreciate the concerns you have in making sure it's a robust process. It's just also worth adding, Bryony's answered the question, but we're talking about people who have been evicted, and obviously there's a due process to go through to get there. And we're talking a very minority of people who are causing real serious issues. And I know from casework that officers look holistically at everyone's individual situation. And we support people in a variety of ways. And we have projects with vulnerable tenants that are going in, people due to move into very soon, for example, and partnering with many organisations in business, Longos, Launchpad, etc., YMCA, to really focus and support those people that need it. So just wanted to, I suppose, add that reassurance, but yeah, appreciate the concern.
Oh, Councillor.
Just a quick word, housing is a subject to my heart as a social tenant, as they call us. Yeah, it's just to say, fully support this report. The main benefit for me is key worker focus. I'd like to see key worker definition expanded in the future. If COVID's taught us anything, it's that there's all sorts of key workers. So I hope that could be expanded in the future. A level of priority given to existing tenants who don't meet the or preference criteria. I think that will ease up the backlog. I think it'll help lessen the competitive nature of our banding system, where everybody's trying to climb up on each other with appeals, and that tends to be what our ward work is mostly about. I'm glad that the councillors raised the ASB clarification. I wasn't going to mention it, but I will. It says the proposal states it's proposed that applicants that have been previously evicted due to serious threatening or violent behaviours that have not been addressed. And in the consultation, it says ASB. It doesn't mention ASB in the proposal. My point is ASB is a very wide spectrum. We've got recent examples of maybe police saying that kids caught on motorbikes used as a deterrent against their tenancy. Child talk is a little bit not by the rules as far as I'm concerned. So that was it really. Bit of clarification on that. Everything else is brilliant. It's a great report, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I mean, Brian, do you want to come back on that particular point in that? We've talked about serious offending, threatening, violent behaviour. It's not the same as ASB.
And I think that point is a very good one. I think that's exactly why what ended up actually being proposed was not ASB in general, was serious, violent or threatening behaviours. So just to make it a bit more explicit than ASB that was in the consultation.
Take that on board. Okay, so if there's no more questions on it, if we move to paragraph 2, recommended action. So we're basically noting the findings from the consultation. 2.2 is actually approving the proposed changes, and paragraph 2.3 is agreeing the timetable. We've lost the paragraph where the timetable actually is, but does anyone not agree those actions, recommended actions on paragraph 2? Okay to do that? Excellent, thank you very much, and Brian, congratulations to all involved in this report. From everyone in this committee, I'm pretty much unanimous about that. It's a great piece of work, and thanks very much indeed to your team.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll now move to item 12, which is the libraries. I can't find this. But I don't need to find it, so we'll just go ahead with it. Thank you. Simon has appeared on the screen anyway. So Simon, would you like to introduce this report on the future strategic direction 22 to 25, 2022 to 2025 on Reading libraries?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report is a follow-up to the report that came to committee in July regarding the library service strategy. It's to update committee on the consultation, which we ran in August and September, and to note that we got over 1,500 responses, a large proportion, or 20% of which were from non-library users. And we're delighted with the level of response to a consultation such as this one, and we're very conscious, and it came through in the feedback, about the enthusiasm and goodwill there is for the service. So thank you to everyone who contributed, and to council officers, especially within housing and comms, who supported us to get the message out there. We wanted to ensure that we could deliver the data in a short period of time to come back to you for November's meeting, as we said we would do in July. The results are in the report. There's a lot of detail in the report and the appendices. In short, the consultation showed widespread approval for the strategic aims which we were consulting on, which are noted in section 1.5. I think it's worth highlighting that there's preferences for different kinds of library service. There's different views about how to run a library service, different views about what we lend, and this is in common with many other library services, and we do talk to each other. So the strategy will reflect this. So we're asking, as it says, for committee to agree the adoption of these priorities. That allows us to then develop the delivery plan, which we'll do alongside looking at the data that we've previously circulated, plus feedback from customers, to formulate a delivery plan to cement and ensure that libraries make the maximum contribution possible to residents and to the corporate aims over the next few years. We did also get some valuable feedback regarding what we need to think about as part of any possible changes to Central Library and the Home Service. And finally, I just wanted to highlight the high satisfaction score for the Home Library Service, which serves a really high proportion of residents relative to lots of other councils. It's a very, very valued service. We're very conscious of that. So just to thank that team, to thank the residents there for their feedback. The users of that service, around a third gave their feedback, which is really great. So that's the conclusion, really. So if there's any questions, I'll be quiet now.
Thank you, Simon. It's nice to hear, it's nice to hear you mention about the large number of responses from people, non-library users, because non-library users are people we want to start using library, and to find out why they're not and what we would take to get them to use them. I think that's excellent. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, it's a very good point. So yeah, I'd like to discuss that a little bit more. Firstly, I'd like to thank Simon and the library team who've been working under quite limited resources throughout COVID and have just done an admirable job. I mean, simply because of COVID and going online, we've now created our second largest library in terms of our online and digital services in Reading, really quite by default. So it's really been amazing, and I thank them for taking the time and taking the care to actually ensure that all of our library services have been brought back safely in line with COVID restrictions and everything, which have also been presenting quite a challenge for libraries, touching books and seeing children, and there's a lot of complexities with it. So I just, I'd like to address councillors and to have you note the interesting details in the report and the things that it shows us. This was never going to be a consultation about cutting services or anything like that, but it is very much a consultation that was done in line with budget cutbacks that have happened over the decade with austerity and with continued cuts. 10 or 11 years ago, back in 2011, we had a net budget of 1.9 million. This year we are just under 1 million. So it's really been cut in half. And this team has no aspersions on doing anything but continuing to deliver the best they can for with our library services, but are also very conscious of making those services work within the budget that we are able to give them and trying to provide the best that we can for the community. As we all know, libraries are a statutory service. And I'm really pleased that along with Labour colleagues over the years, we have in this town continued to deliver library services for this town. Other towns have cut back, they've closed libraries, but we continue to keep that as a priority for this town. I do want to just point out and make sure that everyone has read the strategic priorities in section 1.5. that talk about supporting our communities as we recover from the pandemic, helping children and young people, improving access to online services, supporting improvements in health, well-being, and literacy, and bringing arts, culture, and heritage into library spaces, because that's really what this team is about, and that is what this consultation actually supported in quite strong numbers. But what we have here now is a bunch of information, of really good information. It's talking about hours when people can best access libraries, have a library open when people are actually able to access it. Digital inclusion, the importance of education involving young people and preparing them for our thriving communities for the future. Digital inclusion and looking at how our library service can reach into areas, and I do hope that people notice the maps, the heat maps of where we're reaching, where we aren't. So thinking about areas where we've got deprivation, where we've got communities that aren't properly accessing or able to access our libraries, how are we going to reach those? We have our visiting library service. Our budget is sitting down there kind of almost constraining us from being able to expand that. So this is almost imploring to everybody, do remember this because this is a really important statutory service that we provide. And this consultation has spelled out to me certainly very clearly, and I'm sure to each of you, that we've got a hardworking service here. We've got a lot of really good priorities to deliver on, and a lot of good information to empower the team to deliver a really effective and strong library delivery management plan going forward within the constraints that we have. So thank you again to officers.
Thanks, Councillor. Very good. Councillor Williams wants to speak.
Thank you,
you, Chair, gang. I realise it's getting late, but libraries are so important. And I've written down almost all the same points that Councillor Ross has already made better than me. I wrote them down, so I'll read it out. No, libraries are essential. Everyone should have the right, I think, to do exactly what Councillor Ross said, which is participate in the cultural life of Reading and access the benefits of literary production. And everything that comes with a library, everyone should have that right. It is particularly sad to see the cuts mentioned in the report, and as Councillor Rowland said, the budget has halved in the last 10 years. Halved. For a service that I've just said is essential, and I'm willing to bet everyone here thinks it's essential, and it's still halved. And I don't know if that's what our friends in the Conservative Party had in mind when they embarked on austerity. I don't think it is. I think this is just another awful consequence of a failed policy, Chair. But anyway, they can speak for themselves, I'm sure. So the library service sets a strategic vision, but it has to do so, that a vision that can be met with only half the budget it used to have. So of course the priorities are great. It's sort of odd not to see book lending at least on the list. But anyway, all our thanks to the library staff and to the lead member. If I could pick up on one detail, because I saw mentioned a couple of times, maybe 3 times, computer coding clubs. And I think those would be fantastic. And the computer coding club at my son's school is hugely oversubscribed. Not every kid can get on it that wants to do it. And I think that would be a fantastic additional benefit. So if anyone knows what those, if there are specific plans for that, or if it was just mentioned in the report, that would be fantastic. And finally, I'm gabbling now. The delivery plan was mentioned in the conclusions and was mentioned by the officer. Is that delivery plan something that comes back to committee, or is that a working document that officers generate and then work on? So it's just those 2 questions after my gabble.
First question was about coding clubs. I'll go back to Simon in a minute if you don't mind. It's worth. I mean, you just reminded me, and it's worth remembering that we have kept all our libraries open right way through austerity, despite a 50% cut in the funding of our libraries. We've not closed one library. We were under threat at one time, but we pulled through. Other authorities have done that. I'm sitting here very smug with the most beautiful library in Reading in my councillor ward, and built by, actually donated that library from Caversham, which was in Oxfordshire at the time. It was built to Reading, so it's great assets that Caversham brought along to Reading. And I think in return we got a bridge. I'll stop talking and go to Councillor and vote for comments. Want to speak.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight this, that since the cuts are bad, especially when you look at the areas like Weekly, it's less than 1 million. The math here shows that very little happens in Weekly, as it highlights when it comes to survey in Weekly. One of the IT problems are one of those. It's a big ward again, and access to IT is one of the major issues. And as you know, the Weekly ward, the dynamics is about deprivation. 31.6% of children are in poverty, and the nearest library in Weekly is now the South Reading Leisure Centre, because the older one was closed. And when we're talking about literacy, as we see the cuts that have happened since 2010, it means that we're not doing anything since then to make sure that the prevention of children or whoever can access anything. If you look at the dynamics of Weekly, jobs and all that, people are achieving less than normal rates for education. So libraries, in a sense, to change it back, is about why people in Weekly specifically, I'm talking about my ward, do not have those access to places. Why are they not accessing libraries? What are the ways that we can help children? If I look at it about the 15-minute strategy, if you look at that environmental, the nearest library, as I said, is in South Reading. So when you leave from Wicklow to get to South Reading, you need to get 2 buses. And if you have a disability or walking or any other things, it doesn't sit well with the environment. So we need to look at it holistically, how we also bring things into Wicklow, because in the strategy, mentioned deprivation and young literacy, IT, all these major things that are very, very important. So I think it's quite important that this library service expands and we put more money into it so that it reaches these spaces like Wicklow in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your comments. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to support fellow councillor said. Yeah, I'm glad that the mobile library service has been kept in some form. Councillor Williams mentioned austerity, but he forgot to mention that them as well, in partnership with the Tory government at the time. So yeah, the most important bit for me of the report is councillors are committed to ensuring that library services are accessible to everyone across the borough, especially to those who need it most. That's what we should take out of this thing. That's what we should stick to. Yeah, the quality of opportunity leads to a quality of outcome. So need to remember. I would say the thing about the maps, which is the area that we live in, South Whitley, it's not even on the maps. It's got chopped up. So you might use the supplemental messaging and that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, well said, Councillor. So we go, if no one else wants to speak, go back to Simon Smith on specifically delivery plan, coding, classes, and Whitley, and why South Whitley's chopped off the map, please.
Yeah, sorry, I have taken notes, so I'll go through things. That's why my face is now a different colour, because it's coming off the screen. Yeah, to go through things, so I think I'll try and do them in order because that's the order I wrote them down in. Coding clubs, so if anyone doesn't know, they're clubs to help children learn coding skills, which are kind of a key part of you know, what young people need to know these days. And are kind of quite similar to some of the stuff I used to get taught at school as well. So it's all come full circle. We did run one pre-lockdown with the help of volunteers. There was a really interestingly strong preference to bring that back in quite. There's a lot of feedback in that survey about them. So yeah, that when we come to write a delivery plan, I would like to see some more of those happening. They're quite intensive, but we did have a group of volunteers that were helping us with that. With regard to the delivery plan, that would be with officers, and it'd be a working document. So we'd be looking to kind of develop something based on everything we've seen, work something up, and try and make sure that it is doing what we all need it to do. With regard to supporting people to use the service, so I hear what Councillor was saying about South Whitley particularly, or South Reading particularly. What we'll be needing to do with the delivery plan and what we do from here on in is making the most of what we've got. So the delivery plan is in line with those strategic principles. It is clear needs to support everyone, as Councillor's just said, everyone may have the best opportunity to use the service. We do have a limited resource, but we need to focus on what we can provide to help people and where we can really make a difference. And I'm really passionate that we do make a difference with things like that with this stage of this strategy and delivery plan. And regarding the map, that's down to nothing other than my lack of ability in editing anything. So yeah, we got the report back to you. But I seem to have managed to chop off a bit of Reading, which wasn't my intention, obviously. So apologies to the councillors and to the residents.
I think, I mean, do you forgive Simon, Councillor?
Of course I do. I know it, so yeah.
Thank you.
I think you're forgiven. Okay, so without wanting to say, imagine what you could do with twice this amount of money. We won't go there again. If there's no one else who wants to speak, we'll go to paragraph 2, recommended action, which is to note the outcome of the consultation, adopt the strategic priorities, the library service, and authorise the creation of the delivery plan that Simon just referred to. Is everyone happy to do that? Thank you very much, councillors. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Okay, tracking on nicely. And it's only 9. So item 13 is the enhanced graffiti removal project. One man's graffiti, one person's graffiti is another person's multi-million pound, must be protected piece of street art, isn't it? So we'll get into that. Andy Evans will introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep it brief. This report being presented this evening provides information on the proposal to enhance the Council's current graffiti removal policy following the decision to allocate in this financial year £75,000 of community infrastructure levy, which is self-funding as it's more widely known, to tackle graffiti removal from across the borough to improve the general appearance of the town. The main change in the proposed new enhanced policy is to increase the area of graffiti removed free of charge from private properties with the owner's permission from 1 metre squared to 2 metres squared. This will allow the council's graffiti removal team to be able to tackle sites with graffiti in place that presently fall outside the criteria set in the current policy. Appendix 2 lists sites identified by the cleansing team that will fall under the new enhanced policy and can now be cleaned up. In addition to those sites, there's also sufficient funding to allow for the removal of an additional 500 pieces of graffiti of 2 metres squared across the borough that get reported or are identified during the current financial year. These can be individual pieces of graffiti or can be used in multiples of 2 metres squared to tackle larger areas of graffiti. All graffiti that we remove as part of this initiative will be recorded on Love Clean Ready. It's also proposed to purchase 20 community removal kits, which will be able to be distributed to interested community groups who wish to tackle low-level graffiti present in their own local community. Following the general increase in street art and the visit of Banksy to Reading earlier this year, it is also proposed to set up a street art advisory panel. The purpose and role of the panel is outlined in Appendix 4. Thank you, Chair, and welcome any questions on the graffiti removal. My colleague Donna is here if there's any questions on the street art advisory panel. Thank you.
Oh, Donna's back with that background. I've actually been around all along. It's amazing. I hope she has. And thank you. Thanks, Andy. Adele, Councillor Barnett-Wilkes. It's getting late.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we've saved the best for second to last. This report, I want to thank officers for this report. A lot of work's gone into this, and I also couldn't let this report be presented without highlighting the work put in by the Catesgrove councillors, in particular Councillor Challenger, who came to me back in April and pointed out that the policy that we had wasn't enabling us to tackle areas, particularly on tenanted buildings, where there were becoming graffiti hotspots. And by the time it was reported, the area would be too large for us to come free under our policy, and the tenants in the building wouldn't be interested in paying for it or able to pay for it to be removed. And the landlords weren't that fussed either. And there are a number of sites, you will see in Appendix 2, across Catesgrove that he brought to us in that initial meeting. And it's the sort of really good ward work where you pick up something that affects your ward, and then it comes out to something that benefits the entire borough. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm really pleased that we're bringing this forward. I think we've all looked at that list in Appendix 2. I'm only talking about paragraphs 2.1 to 2.3 and appendices 1 to 3. I'm going to the concept of art to Councillor Rowland. She makes it happy. But hopefully we've all looked at those sites. There's also potential within this budget to tackle some other large sites that may arrive if we've still got space in this budget. So this is going to make a real impact on how our town looks, having a cleaner, safer, greener Reading with fewer scribbles in it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rowland. Now, before Councillor Rowland tells us what art is, I'm looking forward. Can't wait for that. I think Donna should talk to this. Did you want to talk about the art bit of this report, Donna? You're looking horrified. What, are you still here at 9:15 if you don't want to talk about art?
I'm happy to. Yeah, of course, I'm happy to just briefly go through Appendix 4. Yeah.
We'll leave it until if there's any questions. Was it Councillor? Did you have? Councillor Golden.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's just a quick question. I just wondered what the community were made of.
Sorry, can you repeat that? What the what's made of?
Community kits.
Okay, wait, can you hold fire on that one for a second? We'll come back to you, Donna. I've skipped out. Oh, is it? Very confusing. Okay, Andy, we're still on non-art removal kits. What are they?
So that's a really good question, and I haven't got that level of detail with me at the moment, so I do apologise. I'm not absolutely 100% certain what is in the kit, but I will find out and report back to the council and include it back in the minutes of the meeting. So I do apologise, I haven't got that level of detail with me.
Sorry, is that okay? Okay. Councillor, I know you want to speak, but Councillor Rowland hasn't had a chance to talk, and she's going to tell us about art.
I think I will. Thank you, Chair. Now, I do want to draw everyone's attention to the Appendix 4 and the appropriation of an arts, a street art consultative group. I think everyone was highlighted when Banksy came to town in May. I know it certainly woke me up out of an early sleep that morning, and it really affected the way that we looked and thought about graffiti and street art in this town. On one hand, you've got graffiti, which can actually be something that is almost detrimental. It can certainly be detrimental to a building, it can be detrimental to an area, and it can be detrimental to a community. You've got street art, which can actually uplift an area, which can actually uplift a community, and which actually can make people feel better. Since Mr. Banksy came to town, Reading has thought a lot about street art and graffiti. I'd like to point out even the happiness boxes and point to them as actually something that I know preceded Mr. Banksy's arrival into town, because I had a meeting the morning that Banksy arrived into town about the happiness boxes, which are some of the utility boxes that have been painted around town that say things like love and beautiful colors and all of that. It's really very positive. I think we can think about towns throughout the UK where we may have all gone on holiday this summer, and think about towns like Brighton and Hove or Bristol or different towns where they've got really exhilarating and exciting street art. Well, I would also encourage you that I think we only have to look around us. We really had a real explosion of street art in Reading, and it has the ability to transform our communities and to create positivity and to transform places too through that. So as Oscar has stated so eloquently, as he jumps over the wall of the prison, art needs to live and art needs to thrive and cannot be, nor should it be, choked per se. So it is within that spirit that we are establishing a street art advisory panel to look at the positive effects that street art can have on a community, the positive effects that street art can have had on Reading, and to look at some of the finer details, graffiti, street art, and sometimes there are finer details that have to be outlined, perhaps. But we'll be coming back to you at the March committee. The membership will look to be involving people with the visual arts, within the visual arts sector, wider civic representatives, and also members of highways and street care. But I think it's really exciting, the potential that we have for street art in the town. And I'm hoping that this advisory panel will be able to make something that its continued expansion even in this town can be something that we're all proud of. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I mean, that was everything I hoped it would be. So, no, it was. It was profound. Thank you. Serious. Right. So, Councillor Singh, I think, is the next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take 2 minutes of time. I don't want anybody, but we would have our very bus services.
Good point. Very good point.
So, quickly on this, we are extending this to the private properties as well. And most of this properties is in the alleyways as well. We see behind the walls of the residents. And I already had 3-4 residents saying that in my wall, there's a graffiti and alleyways. So what does it mean in terms of the workload the officers will have when we reach out to the private residents and how that would be managed? And secondly, I'm assuming specific to alleyways, this art and graffiti will come back to those walls once we remove it, probably with more imaginative, there or bigger ones. So how do we, come back and resolve that issue? Is that funding will be available in every year? Because this is a recurring issue. So yeah, those are the 2 things I had to ask the officers.
Okay, good questions. Councillor Mitchell, is that related to and then we can ask Andy both?
Not really, it's just one additional point. Quite about the question of what is art? Here all night discussing that, it's quite subjective, as we know. But the panel fully agree and supports the idea of the panel, let's protect proper art where it is valued by the community, of course. And I'm not suggesting there should be a sort of rapid reaction element to it, but and I know it's an advice. But street art by its definition is quite ephemeral, can be. And we all saw what happens at Banksy. Within a day or 2, it had been vandalised. I accept that that's probably by a rival of Banksy, because allegedly does this thing. But we did have a period where there was debate between council and Ministry of Justice as to who owned the wall, what was going on, and the artwork itself was not protected. Eventually it was, but that Banksy, so the typewriter part of it was damaged. Arguably irreparably, because it can be replaced. So I'm concerned that if there is something of, frankly, national significance that does it, I'm not talking about a localised, it is something that we can be proud of as a town and want to be seen to be protective of. Will the panel be able to make a rapid recommendation that action is taken to protect it, or will it be something of the committee that will take time to visit, assess it, and in that time period we could lose them? That's why I'm concerned. There needs to be a fairly quick reaction element to this.
No, good points. I think one was for Andy, which is where is the resource going to come from, and can we keep on top of it? And then we've got Donna afterwards, which is the rapid reaction art squad coming out of abseiling out of helicopters protecting it. Right, but basically, can we do this faster then? So Andy first, if that's all right.
Yep, certainly, Chair. So it's a really good question raised by Councillor Singh, but with the actual this graffiti removal programme will build on the work that our graffiti removal team already carry out. It will be managed by the cleansing team, and what we'll do is we'll put additional operatives to make sure that we can still clear all the graffiti on Reading Borough Council's land and also take on this extra commitment. So this budget enables us to do that. So that's how we're going to manage the resource. I think I mentioned previously we're going to record all graffiti that we're dealing with on the Love Clean Reading app. So at the end of the financial year, we've got details of the levels of graffiti that we've removed on top of what we normally remove, and then we'll bring a report back to this committee so we can report back on what we've actually done compared to the budget. And there is always the opportunity in future years to bid for further self-funding or further other funding, should that be required. I think at the moment the key message that we've got out of this is that we want to go out there and make a splash and make a difference around the community by removing these areas of graffiti that have never really fitted in with the policy at the moment. Then report back to this committee in March time on the success of that. And just while I've got the opportunity, Councillor Davies, I've now found the information on what's in the community graffiti removal kits. And basically, it's basic PPE, which is eye goggles and latex gloves. There's a range of cloths and materials for actually rubbing onto the graffiti, stiff bristle, scrubbing brush, and then also importantly the graffiti removal, which I'm told is safe to use by volunteers. It's quite low level in terms of its the chemicals involved in it, so it's quite a handy kit that can remove low level graffiti. If it's anything of a difficult nature or really sprayed onto the wall, that's where we then expect that the community volunteers to liaise with our graffiti removal team will then come along if it's more difficult to remove. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, a good piece of research while we were waiting to speak. Donna.
Thank you. So yeah, we're really conscious of the fact that we would need the panel to be quick in reacting and responding, and obviously subject to the decision this evening, we would start working on drawing up the terms of reference that would take that into account for the advisory panel.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have got two more requests to speak on this. One from Councillor Mangnani.
Can you tell me, please, whether anybody ever gets charged for doing criminal damage, because that's what it is, and you know, is there any record of how many people have been arrested and get any money back only then to pay the cleaner?
Are you suggesting we go out about it?
No, I'm not.
Why wouldn't we? I mean, that's the question. Yes. Councillor Lang, do you want to ask both questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just we have a successful sort of like app which, when we report fly tipping, it gets picked up generally within sort of like 48 hours, and it works perfectly. But it can sort of like have the indirect effect that they dump it, we pick it up, they dump it again, we pick it up. Yeah, it does have that, you know, that sort of problem with it. I noticed that it's in Catesborough. We don't have a particular problem with graffiti in Whitley. It would be more sort of like your Alan Partridge type thing when he sprays his car. I think that would be the sort of graffiti we get more than the art. But obviously Catesborough is full of artists and that, and I'm just wondering whether we would actually be providing people with a blank canvas, and then they come in and do it again, and then come back with another blank canvas, and then they can practice their art, and it becomes a bit of a game. I'm not trying to poo-poo it in any way. It's a fantastic initiative, but it's just the way I think out of the box sometimes.
Okay, Councillor Barnum, before we go back to the officers, do you have an answer to that?
Yes,
What is it?
Which is it's broken window syndrome. So graffiti tags and tagging attract other tags and tagging. So if you can break the cycle of it, you've got a reasonable chance of people moving elsewhere. And part of Councillor Rowland's work on this is actually looking at, with the panel when it's set up, on how we can create areas of the town where we're actually encouraging and allowing that. So it's not just cleaning it off where it comes, it's also trying to redirect it as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mpofu Coles.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just not a question, but to add that debate about what is art is not and what is not art becomes in abstract, because if you look at banks, how everybody ran around and yet they read a new level, it's been there and it had struggles and nobody thought it was art enough to be protected. I think we have to look at ourselves, because the minority people of Reading, and many people, not the minority, many of them feel that the Reading Museum is art in a specific way, in their own way, and it expresses thanks because it's not visible, it's called the national icon, and then we look at it and protect it better in that way. I think there's something about class here that comes out, so I'm just making a comment.
I am actually with you on that. Does it mean you have to be rich and famous to have your graffiti preserved? Question, but not for this evening. Well, it would have been if it wasn't. Does anyone want to answer the question about prosecutions? It's probably for the police, actually.
I just
I
wondered whether
don't
they
think the
kept a
council
record
does
of it,
that.
so-
I don't suppose the council does. Anyone know? I don't think so. Sorry, that's all. Councillor Rowland has something else to say. Would she like to stay out late? Oh, she does. Okay, cool. Hopefully, I dissuaded you.
Chair, I will say that I do thank Councillor Coles for highlighting Black History Month too, because it is really the originator of actually some of the wonderful street art that we do have in this town, and that was created back in 1991, I believe, celebrated 30 years last year, as I recall. It's something that's looking to be protected, and that is again something street art can do. That is such a noted and important piece, not only for our Black community, but for all of us. So thank you for that.
Okay, so if everyone's had their piece on that, can we go to the recommended actions in item paragraph 3? So we're noting the position of the SIL funding for graffiti borough-wide, and we're approving the enhanced graffiti removal policy, the immediate commencement of the enhanced removal policy, seems the same thing to me, but okay. And 2.4, the what is art, street art advisory panel as set out in Appendix 4. All happy with that? Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, final item of the evening, because we've done item 15, remember, it was a lot of self-management.
It's me again, Chair.
Let's see. Sorry, Councillor O'Connell's just leaving. No reflection on you, Andy, whatsoever. Do you want to tell us about the self-management report on allotments?
Yes, certainly. So this report provides information on a proposal that a self-management allotment plan is developed and brought back to March's H&L meeting for adoption, and also that self-management of Reading's allotment sites is proposed to be introduced as an option from June 2022 following completion of the allotment plan. Appendix A outlines the progress made on the actions agreed when allotment self-management was last discussed by this committee in December 2020. Since then, officers from the Parks team have been actively providing support and guidance for allotments, groups and individuals on a number of RBC sites who are considering whether to self-manage their allotment sites in the future. I think there's 7 active sites at the moment considering that. The Parks team have also made significant progress on clearing and bringing back into use overgrown plots on the sites listed in the report. Another significant development since the December 2020 H&L meeting has been the appointment recently of an allotment project officer to accelerate the development of a self-management model and liaise with allotment tenants. Outlined within the reports are the key tasks the officer will concentrate on in the upcoming months. These include defining the best appropriate self-management model for Reading, researching best practice elsewhere, continue to update and progress the allotment action plan, carry out further consultation with our allotment tenants and liaise with potential self-management sites, dealing with any questions or concerns that they may have on the process, and creating and posting website information on self-management for tenants. Finally, the intention, if approved tonight, is to report back to this committee in March with a self-management model, and the aim for the model, as I've already outlined, to be able to be adopted and for allotment sites in Reading to be considered for self-management from June 2022. Thank you, Chair, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, go to Councillor Rowland, whose portfolio this is.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to thank officers and Andy and his entire team very much for the work they've done with allotments over the past year. It's not been an easy year because we have had a resource deficit that has plagued the team, and yet they have managed to be able to get out and clear allotments, creating new plots, which is one of the things that that the consultation brought forward last year. So I'm really delighted that we do have a new officer in place to specifically drive home a lot of the consultation comments that were given last year. Those comments still form the basis of the actions that officers have been taking, despite the fact that they've been a bit beleaguered by resourcing challenges over the years. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to make improvements on allotments. I was out there in my wellies last week with our allotments officer and really looking at some great progress in trying to make allotments more accessible, more enjoyable places for cars to be able to park, to access sites better, especially for people with disability issues, and to access sites. So thinking of things like that are really beginning to help us get our house in order as far as our allotments offer, which is something that we wanted very much to do. The way forward, and working with the fact that we do have an underlying deficit in 2017, was really for us to get our house in order first, to provide allotment users what they wanted and provide a good statutory service for them. So I'm delighted that we've been able to work with 7 or 8 groups in establishing a self-management model, something that I know that Andy Edwards himself has worked in the past and has learned from the past, and is very eager and sees that as a good positive way forward, that we can continue to provide the best service for allotments in the future. So I would ask colleagues to approve section 2 in this report, and let's wait for what comes back in March. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. So, Councillor Lang.
Yeah, apologies. I thought I've got to say something on this. This is a brilliant policy. Thanks, Andy, for the report. It's an example would be Goddard's Farm, which is an allotment in Whitley, entrance on Basingstoke Road and Harden Road. The only time we ever used to get contact of our residents about allotments was about, it could be about vandalism or water not working, or we're going to close the allotment and build houses on it and stuff like that. But no, what I did was I was contacted by the allotment, by a resident. I put them in contact with Nick Pritchard Gordon, and he done all the rest. He organised a meeting, 13 people, tea and donuts, 56 plots. They marked out 56 plots, they're clearing 20. He turned up on a Saturday, all our local residents loving to bits, enthusiastic, no complaints, fantastic policy, and as well as financial value. It's communitarian politics for me, proper power to the people stuff. So that's what I mean. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Councillor Lang. That's a really positive, upbeat contribution to end the meeting. Thank you very much. So we go to recommended action if no one else wants to speak on paragraph 2.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Did I write you down? No. Have you got a brief contribution?
I'll be very brief. Thank you. I can see from the report that self-management of sites is the way forward in many ways. And anything that speeds up turnover of plot allocation is very welcome, with waiting lists being between 18 months and 8 years. Thinking very slow in order that running an allotment is successful for all must be a priority. Section 6 of the report notes that the environment and climate implications, and I feel that the issue of on-site bonfires should be reviewed. It is my understanding that some plot owners are bringing rubbish onto sites to burn, practice that clearly does not fit with good environmental standards and needs to be addressed. How bonfires and bonfires be monitored by management groups, and will the forces still exercise some control of these issues in the future?
Good questions. Andy, have you got some good answers?
I'm really sorry, Chair. Could you summarise the questions for me? I couldn't hear very much of that, sorry.
All the main questions. The last one was about burning, being allowed to have bonfires on site, because there's a feeling, I think, Councillor McGonigal mentioned about people bringing rubbish on site that they might otherwise not have been able to dispose of. and it's obviously environmental impact. What was the other point?
Yes, and what, will the council, how will the flight of the bonfires be monitored by management crews? And will the council still exercise some control over these issues?
So it's just about the bonfires. Are we still taking responsibility for managing control on those?
So the 2 points that the councillor raised would both be outlined within the service level agreement that will be set up between the allotment site and the council. But for those 2 areas, I would consider that the council would still retain ownership of those 2 issues, because we've got enforcement officers and we've got the experience with the environmental health officers to be able to deal with those situations. So both of the instances that the councillor outlined is something that the council itself would still, in my opinion, keep control of, and other things in the SLA, the service level agreement, will be given over to the allotment tenants to take responsibility for, but not those 2 issues just outlined.
Okay, thanks for that. So can we go to the recommended actions? We're basically noting the report really, and we're introducing self-management as from the 1st of June 2022. We're all happy with that? Okay, great. Before we go, can I just thank Andy and Donna for staying so late after this last item. Thank Nikki and Julie, and Julie's here in person still this time of night. And Nikki's upstairs. So both of those 2 for staying so late, and for sorting out that IT issue we had. So I just want to thank them for that. Thank you. And thanks for everyone for attending. Yeah, bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.